All righty, we are live. Thank you for stopping by the Indie Dave Comics channel. We just sent out the link. We're doing something a little special. We have Mike Murphy on. How many hours you got left on your campaign, Mike?
A little under 8.
All right, so we got 8 hours left to get Mike funded. He needs, what do we figure, 4,700, right around there?
It's about there, yeah.
Yeah, right about 4,700 bucks. And if we can get that 4,700 bucks, then Mike gets funded. He gets to get his comic printed and get into your hot little hands. So while we're here, let's see. I boomered it up yesterday. Mike was with me. So we're gonna see if we can't fix some of our issues. But we definitely want the Samurai and Dinosaurs up there. There it is. All right. Can you see it up on your screen?
Yeah, I got it.
All righty. So we got Samurai and Dinosaurs. Tell us about your project.
Sure. Samurai and Dinosaurs is about an elite group of samurai who are dispatched to investigate a downed meteorite on the outskirts of a Japanese city. It turns into a road movie, and along the way, time begins to break down all around them and not function properly. And that's when dinosaurs from the Jurassic era start folding into their timeline. So as far as the project goes, it takes a little bit from Lone Wolf and Cub. It takes a little bit from Usagi Yojimbo, and the project is also a love letter to art house and grindhouse samurai cinema. It's a project that is close to my heart, and I still feel it's the best thing that Sergio's ever worked on. Sergio is the artist, by the way.
Sorry, my mic was on mute. We get the dogs barking and stuff. All right, so let's look at, we got that big sexy cover. That's really nice. All right, you look at that and you know exactly what it is you're getting.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you can see a little bit of the art on the side with the tears, but we're gonna look at some of this art right here. It's very, I guess, kind of Ninja Turtle-ish. It's a very indie style, but it looks really cool. I really like the style it's going with. I like the way you guys did the lettering right around the words like that.
Yeah. Sergio, in addition to being a great cartoonist, Sergio is an all-around great draftsman when it comes to just comics in general. He handled all the lettering.
All right. What can you tell us about each of these the characters here?
Well, that is so this page is from a flashback sequence for Ren. He's our main character. So that's Ren and the love of his life, who he's just lost, and he's lost her to Daimyo Katai, who's basically the antagonist of the story. So the way daimyos worked is they were somewhere between governors and sheriffs for towns and cities, and they answered directly to the shogun. So Ren was a samurai under the employ of Katai, and things kind of go bad once his wife enters the picture. So that's that page, and let's see what else is there. I picked this page because I thought it showcased off the ink wash technique that Sergio did really well. This is after a few years have passed, and Katai has reached out to Ren for help, despite how things ended between them. And this is him journeying back to the city that he used to defend.
Cool. I like all the I got the dogs in the background. Oh, here the dog fights are starting again. All right, so I love the detail you got that's going on here with the city. All these the little slats and everything.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite shots in the book.
All right. And we got here with the dragon armor.
Yeah, so this is once the group has been assembled and they are well on their way towards the crash site of the meteorite. So everyone's interest is immediately captured by Tetsubun Dorgan, who is the guy in the dragon mech. He's a soldier that has that mech armor out of iron and bamboo, and the suit itself is steam powered.
Cool. All right, yeah, my mic's on. All right. There we go. This is the first meeting with the dinosaurs.
Yep. Yeah, that's the money shot.
There we go. That's super cool. All right.
Yeah. What we really wanted to try to capture, besides paying lip service to stuff like Usagi Yojimbo and Lone Wolf and Cub, is I really had Sergio study Japanese scroll art, and we tried to incorporate as much of that as we could into the pages.
All right. Well, we got Scotty Richards Studio, and he says that EVS said he wants you on his channel tonight. So okay. If he sends you a link, I want you to go, because you're going to get more traction with EVS than you are with me. And like I said yesterday, you're going to tell him that you came right from the EVS. You're going to tell him you came right from the Indie Dave Comics channel.
You got it, man.
All right. And for anybody in the chat that didn't see the last tweet I sent out, I have got, and you can tell EVS, you know what? Tell EVS this. I've got 2 signed Ethan Van Sciver comic books. I've got Green Lantern #4, which has got a really cool Sinestro cover on it. And I've got the Flash Rebirth. This one's not just a comic. This one is Flash Rebirth, the graphic novel. I've got both of these signed by EVS. For everybody that backs your comic tonight, we'll do a raffle, and we will draw 2 names, and 2 people will get 2 signed Ethan Van Sciver comics.
So 2 people will get 1.
Well, yeah, each individual. I'm giving away 2, so 2 lucky people will get 1 comic book. 1 person will get the Flash Rebirth. The other person will get the Green Lantern #4. Again, both signed by Ethan Van Sciver. So let everybody know. What we'll probably do is time right now, starting right now, anybody that backs from either my show. Hey! Good Lord. We were supposed to run these dog fights the other day, but all the crowd, they all ran out of money after the other dog got killed. So. So anyway, so all right, so yeah, so like I said, 2 comics, 2 lucky people will get a comic. We are currently right now at $3,413 on Samurai and Dinosaurs. Like I said, 2 comics, 2 lucky people. We'll go by the time starting now, and I will get with Mike either tomorrow, probably tomorrow sometime, and he can get me a list of names or something, and I'll just put them in a hat, and then we'll work out some way of contacting whoever wins.
All right, so we're calling it any time after 4:25. Well, Pacific.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So he'll be able to see, right? You'll be able to see on your campaign when people contributed.
Yeah, I get email notifications.
All right. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so that's what we'll do. We'll go by that time, and even if they're not watching my show, even if you jump to EVS and you get on his show, we'll let them know that I'm doing this. I'll do the same thing, whether it's on his show or my show.
You got it.
All right. So let's see. Got any more art here going on? Let's see. Here you get signed. Then we got some more. This is like that. This is kind of like that scene in Jurassic Park, where they see the dinosaurs for the first time. They see the big saurians.
Yeah, there were a handful of moments that I wanted to make sure were in the book as I was plotting it out. And I mean, look, it is what it is. Like, if you're going to do a dinosaur story, you have to have like that Jurassic Park shot, you know?
Yeah, and I really like the use of silhouettes a lot. I think that adds a really neat effect.
Thank you.
Yeah. And there it is. There's them from the front view. I imagine that's right after the same thing.
Yeah, this is a bit later in the story. This is maybe about 2/3 of the way through the book. They're on the cusp of reaching the crash site of the meteorite, and yeah, as you can see, he's a bit worse for wear there.
Yeah, a little bit. Looks like I lost his arm there. Let's hope that's not too big a spoiler.
No, it's fine.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So how long have you been working on this book?
The book was designed about 4 or 5 years ago and completed within a year of that. It was just meant to be a submission to like all the usual suspects, you know, Image, Dark Horse, and so on. You know, we spent about a year in the submission process, and the closest that we ever got was do you know Archaea, the studio that publishes Mouse Guard?
Archaea, I think they're also the one that's doing the Dark Crystal books, aren't they?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same studio, yeah.
Well, there were active talks with having them publish it, but that fell through a little bit after they merged with Boom.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that kind of shook everything up, and you know, like for all intents and purposes, the book went into a drawer, so to speak, and cut to now. And when my wife and I decided to jump into the Comicsgate realm, we figured what better way to debut us as a company than with our first and, you know, to this day, like favorite project that we've done.
All right. My dogs are going to be trouble tonight. I don't know if you can hear them chewing on whatever they're chewing.
Yak cheese.
Yak cheese. Yeah, that's make a lot of noise. All right, we're going to talk about your tiers. Let's see. The goal here is to get you to your goal tonight. I know Doug just did the big stream yesterday with EVS, and they did the big. So for anybody that's in the chat, I'm going to make a suggestion. Wait, what? All right. What happens if you make your goal tonight? Can you do the in-demand store afterwards?
Yeah, it's set up to go in demand. Again, since the book is complete, like all I have to do is like Sergio has already completed all the art revisions and expansions. I just have to go in and finish revising like dialogue and caption stuff. If we meet the goal, we're going to keep it open for a few weeks, like maybe the second to last week of March.
Okay.
And then we'll shut it down, go right to the printer, and hopefully by the end of April, we'll be shipping books out. All right.
So I'm going to, for those of you in the chat, and maybe somebody that watches this later, because the goal is to get you to get to your, or the plan is to get you to your goal tonight. We absolutely want to get you to your goal. Doug just finished his book, and I know a lot of people went for that one yesterday. He made like $40,000.
Yeah, it was great. I was so happy.
So there's a lot of people that probably just supported a book, and maybe you're like, man, this one looks really good. I just supported a different book, and maybe they can't. Maybe right now they're like, oh, I can't do the $20. But for the $8. If we can get you to your goal, you can get the $8 to help him get to his goal. You're still going to get your digital comic. And then when it goes in demand, it's going to end, you said to almost the end of March. That gives you the opportunity to get your print copy at a later date. So if we can get him to, if you just put in your $8 to help get him to his goal, get your digital comic, and then you'll have your opportunity, maybe when you've got a little bit of extra money, to pick up that $20 when it's on the in-demand store.
That sounds like a plan to me. And no,
ideally, ultimately, we want everybody to get, you know, the higher tiers and to get their print comic. But if you're just trying to help and you're a little short on cash right now, I think it's a good plan.
Yeah, and I covered this on Twitter, but I've had like a good, I'd say close to a dozen people write in and ask me about extending the campaign. So we launched the week before Christmas. So we've actually done the full 60 allotted days. You know, I wrote to Indiegogo last night and asked like if there was any way like they could just give us, you know, an extra 3 days to a week, and you know, the rules are the rules.
Yeah.
So you know, like it would be it would be nice if we could get the extension, but at the same time, like we're coming up on the halfway point. Like, you know, if we can just get there, like it'll save us the hassle of like having to keep track of everyone who donated and restart the campaign and hope they'll all come back again, you know?
Yeah. What do you got? 8 hours left? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got 8 hours to make this goal. And I just updated, and you went up a little bit from when I last did. You're up to 3413. Let's do another quick one and see if we can see if you sold up. Yep, 3413. So that's right around 1600. I'm sorry, not 1600. 4600 bucks.
Mm-hmm.
So we can get you 4600 bucks, but in the next 8 hours. That's I mean, ultimately that helps you get your extension, and then you can get definitely more eyes on it in that rest of the time, and you kind of have that that you can take a little bit of a breath anyway and say, all right, we at least got to this. Now we can work on really pushing it, because now more people know about it, and there's a lot more people that really want it, because you know, especially the last few weeks was when it's really got some attention.
Yeah, exactly. You know, a lot of that was thanks to getting onto Malin's show. That's when traction really picked up.
Alrighty. Excuse me. I had to wet my whistle. All right. So let's see. So tell me, how long have you been drawing into art?
Well, I've been into art pretty much my whole life. You know, the goal from when I was a kid to a teenager to my 20s was to be a comic artist. And, you know, I'm fortunate enough that I still, you know, my day job is I'm a writer, illustrator outside of comics. So I do still get to draw for a living, but when it comes to comics, like I'm way too slow.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, in comics, pretty much all I do is writing. And that I've been focused on the writing pretty much since I started college.
All right.
Which
and then
was a long time ago now.
Okay. And where did and then so you've been drawing. What is it too much to ask what you do for a living that takes all your stuff that you do?
Yeah, no problem. You know, I work freelance, so pretty much anyone and everyone who will hire me. You know, I've worked for, I've done scripting for a Chinese video game company. I've done artisanal face plates for, like, you know, wall outlets for you know, a boutique factory based out of Beaverton. I mean, I've put together pitches for people, like, you know, looking to submit their books. You know, I've helped edit and do like character design stuff. So there's no one thing I do on a daily basis. It's kind of every month, like some, you know, it's a new adventure.
Oh, I guess that's the life of a freelancer.
Yeah, pretty much.
So work's been steady?
It has, like, things usually take a dip around the holidays. And I was saying this on some other stream, like I should have taken a cue from the way I do business with my day job. you know, I should have launched the campaign around March or April. Because when it comes to freelancing, my wife and I usually find that that's when people are out of the holiday spending bracket and they've taken care of their taxes and they can start thinking about, you know, like making new investments.
Well, this year the taxes were kind of it was kind of shaky whether when all that was going to start.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
your timing was like double bad because you came right out of the holidays, and then you had the then you had the shutdown.
Exactly.
And that affected a lot of people too. So a lesson to anybody, I think, if you're starting, is you need to get as much buzz as you can beforehand, as well as probably take your advice. Around the holidays may not be the best time to start.
Yeah, no.
The campaign.
Yeah, like anywhere from the middle of March to the middle of April is kind of the start of the sweet spot for like doing a crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah, and ultimately probably because you said you had an issue, not an issue, but like the artist had scheduling issues around this time too, right?
Yeah, I mean the whole reason we started when we did is because like Sergio in the circles that we run in, Sergio is a really in demand artist and he has like 2 or 3 projects lined up this year. So, we talked about it and he was like, well, if I'm gonna do these revisions, I kind of have to do them now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, I could have sat on the project, but like for the amount of work that he's put in and the amount of work that he put in like 5 years ago when he first did the book, like I wanted him to see, even a slight return for all that work,
Yeah. Let's see. Oop, wrong button. All right. So what the heck is going on here? Good Lord. My wife's pushing my computer buttons. All right, so who we got in the chat? We got the Metal in the chat. Thanks to Metal for showing up. Scotty Richard Studios. We got Argos Creations. Man of Sex. The man of making love. We're gonna try to get him on Friday. I don't know if he's done a live stream yet, but I'm inviting him on Friday. We're gonna do a group chat.
I talked to him late last night. He's a cool guy.
Yeah, he's really cool. Did you see he did that website for for the foot video?
Yeah, he was telling me.
If man, you need to post that again. It was hilarious. I got the thing up to 100 before pushing that button. Let's see. So we got Man of Sex, we got the Metal, and Scotty Richard Studios. All right. So everybody that's in here, if you don't know, I think you were here from the beginning. I'm giving away these 2 comics, Green Lantern #4 and Flash Rebirth. It's going to be the graphic novel. Both of them signed by Ethan Van Sciver. It's going to be a couple of years probably before you can get an Ethan Van Sciver signature, unless they actually do a Comicsgate convention, which they've been talking about. But it may be a few years before you can get a signature. And I got 2 right here that I'm giving away to anybody. We're going to do kind of a raffle off of anybody that from the start of this stream through, if you get on Ethan's channel tonight, through tonight. But we'll do it right through to the end of your campaign. Anybody that gets on now to the end of your campaign is entered in to win one of these books. So just let that spread around, and hopefully that's enough to get people into your book.
Yeah, and that's mighty gracious of you. Thanks again.
Well, we'll probably do, because I don't want anybody thinking they're going to get doxxed. I don't want anybody's information. We'll let you pick who the 2 people are. That way you can, because I'm not going through your mailing list or anything like that. I don't want to go through any of that. But you pick the 2 people, and we can get in touch with them somehow, and
sure.
let them know that they won. You since you have the mailing list, you can just send them an email, say, hey, you won the free comic. And,
yeah, we'll do.
And then let them know who they have to contact to get a hold of that.
You got it.
Alrighty. So what are we up to now? 34.40. So we went up a little bit. Right now, the total is
Yeah, just
34.40.
had another backer about 5 minutes ago.
Sweet. All right. Outstanding. Let's get some more in. Let's get some more in here. If you haven't backed, I have backed this book. I'm a backer, but I backed it before the giveaway, so I'm not. I can't give the book to myself. Oh, that would save me on postage. But yeah. So excuse me. Yeah, I backed it a couple of weeks ago. So that's another reason why I'm here pushing the book, because I want to get the book. I want the book in my hands. I want to get to the printer. I want it in my hot little hands.
Well, it won't. Like I was saying earlier, it won't be that long. Because as soon as we shut down the in-demand, we'll just go right to print. I was originally considering going through Print Ninja, but talking to John Malin, I didn't take into consideration that would be like a 2+ month waiting period.
Yeah, because they gotta load it on a cargo ship.
Yeah,
take however long it takes for it to get here.
Yeah, so we're looking for local comic printers here in Portland and the greater Oregon area. And once we nail one down, we'll just, send the files over and then drive over and pick them up when they're done.
Cool. So you've already got it. You got a local printer, or?
We've got it narrowed down to about 4. We're trying to get the best price that we can, and we also have to look at how their paper stock and print quality, all that stuff.
Cool. Now, you said let's go through your process, because when you first had the project, your project was essentially finished.
Yeah.
So you went to Indiegogo, and how did that go? What happened from there? When you first started it, you put it in there. Did you already have a printer picked out, or? Well, I said right now you're looking at different stuff.
Right. Yeah. At that point, we were still considering Print Ninja. And yeah, that was, just first time stumble. I should have done the proper research and realized oh, they're an overseas printer. So yeah, I might have to take a slight hit on some of the profits, because I'm sure whatever printer we go with, the costs are going to be a bit higher than Print Ninja would be. Mm-hmm. But that's fine.
I think Zach went to I think his was in Canada.
Yeah. What was it? For Iron Sights, he mentioned them on a video, and I talked to him privately about them a little bit. They're a possibility, but I don't know. He had so experience with them, and I don't know. I figure if I can nail down a local printer, and I can actually be there for part of the process, and see make any corrections that I need to.
Yeah, it's a lot easier if you can just drive over.
Exactly.
If you have to constant emails and stuff like that.
Right, and just trust their eye,
Mm-hmm. All right. I want everybody, because Wenger just started a live stream. I want somebody to go over to Wenger's stream and let them know that I'm giving away comics to Samurai and to anybody in the back, Samurai and Dinosaurs. Let's go, guys. Let's get this going. Let's see. So, all right. So you said for paper samples and stuff like that, or?
Yeah, and I mean, my wife and I, we self-publish a book once a year. We do a kids book on Free Comic Book Day. So when it comes to the printing process, we're used to having a fairly hands-on approach, and just there's a lot of variables. Sometimes if the ink, sometimes the type of ink that they use can affect how it sits on the page, especially when you're doing gray tones. Mm-hmm. So there's just a lot of little weird stuff like that you just kind of want to see in person.
So all right, so you do children books for free? Do you write those books? How does that work?
Yeah. My wife and I do a series called For Hire, and I write it and she draws it, and it's kind of our love letter to Calvin and Hobbes.
Okay.
It's about a boy and his favorite toy, which is a monster for hire. Like the monster's name is Lenny, and it's kind of meant to be like a play on the whole Captain Action thing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, and for like those who don't know, Captain Action was like a toy from like the 70s and 80s where you could kind of dress him up to be any type of hero or profession.
Oh, it was
So
like a GI Joe,
yeah,
GI
yeah,
Joe basically.
yeah, yeah. So we put that out once a year on Free Comic Book Day. Like we do like 2 to 3 different store signings on Free Comic Book Day, and just like give away free sketches for kids and stuff like that.
Is it the same book every year? Or do you write a new adventure for every?
Oh no, it's a new issue every year.
Oh, cool.
As a matter of fact, on a different stream, I was saying that depending on how Samurai and Dinosaurs goes, and the next thing we have lined up goes, if we can, we might launch a campaign either late this year or early next year for hire or another kids book, and tap into the Comicsgate kids book market a little bit, because we've heard that there's kind of a niche and demand for that area.
Nice. One of the things I'm working on, I've got an artist I'm working with, Paul Dozier, and we're working on a few projects together. And one of them is we're doing kind of a take on Dr. Seuss.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so his art style is really flexible. He's really good at like mimicking other art styles. Like he said, I asked him at one point, I was like, "Oh, could you do it?" Because we were working on a little comic strip, and I was like, "If we needed to, could you do like a Calvin and art style?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I've done that before." And so right now he's kind of aping a Dr. Seuss style, and I'm coming up with the the little short poems. We're doing it. It's a Comicsgate book, but we're trying to make it have a wider appeal.
Awesome.
But yeah, so initially I was like, oh, we should do this kind of like a kid's book, but I don't know how much that cost over making it. So we're making it more like a comic. We're gonna it's gonna kind of be a mix of the two. It's gonna be like a comic book, but it's gonna have the same kind of poetic, phrasey stuff like a Dr. Seuss book.
Sure, that's a really cool idea.
All the crazy imagery.
Yeah, it's something. When we first decided to get into the Comicsgate scene, it was something that we didn't even consider much, because we thought that the lion's share of focus was on high concept action and adventure type stuff that kind of echoed back to like the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. But I've heard from a lot of people that they're looking for kids comics and kids books designed with a similar sensibility.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go through some of these tiers you got while we're on the page.
Sure.
All right, so for $8, what are you getting?
For $8, you get the digital copy.
All right.
And the digital copies will probably go out way sooner than the end of April. As a matter of fact, you'll probably have them by the end of March.
All right. So that's all right. That's your first tier. We got 21 people claim that one already. And what's your next tier?
The next tier is just the book itself.
All right, that's $20. You're getting your print copy of the book, and I see up here that all the print copies are signed.
Yeah,
all print copies signed by Mike Murphy. So you're getting your $20 signed comic book, and I mean, look at the art. It's gonna be like getting in early on some of these indie books, like Cerberus, and it's got that similar type of style.
Yeah, we're not going to do a huge amount of overprinting. Like, we're going to print up a few because we're anticipating some getting lost in the mail or damaged or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty much what the print run is what it is, and when they're gone, that's it. Unless we decide to do another one, down the road.
Is there a formula everybody's works off of, like a basic general idea, like a percentage of overprints that everybody kind of goes with?
To be honest, I didn't even think about it until your boy Zach brought it up when he popped into Ethan's stream that night with Scott Kurtz.
You're going to talk about that in a few minutes. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, but like he went into or maybe it was the night before that, because I think he was on both nights. He brought it up, and it was just something that didn't even occur to me. I'm like, oh well, of course there are going to be copies that get lost in the mail. We're going to do probably like an extra like 30 to 60 copies just for that, and to keep on hand for like store signings and conventions.
Yeah, that's about right. What do you expect? Well, your print runs whatever people buy, right?
Exactly.
So right now we're at 72 of just the single print. 72 claimed on that single print. Let's see. The next tier is $25. That gets you both the paperless and the print.
Yeah.
Right, and all of this is looking to be everything that looks like it's expected delivery April.
Yeah, we shut down end of March, and hopefully by the second to last week of April, we'll be shipping out books.
All right. For $35, what are we getting?
That's the double your pleasure tier, so 2 copies of the physical book. And I'm thinking, just as a way of saying thank you, because there are more people that have claimed those than I was anticipating.
Oh.
Just as a thank you, I might throw in the digital copy as well.
All right, cool. We got 11 claimed on that as of right now. Let's see. For $135, what is that?
That's the support the troops tier. Fairly early on in the campaign, I had a lot of people write to me and say that I should include that as a tier. So the plan originally was at that tier, and that includes the price includes shipping for U.S. residents.
Okay.
At that tier, you get 2 copies of the book, just like the $35 tier, and we ship 3 copies out to the troops.
Okay. How many copies go out to the troops?
3.
Okay, so for every book that somebody gets, they ship 3 to the troops.
Yeah.
Cool. That's a good deal.
Yeah. So, it says in the reward tier, and we can alter it once we post it. It says that we were going to send it out via the USO, but I want to say around the middle of January, Mike S. Miller posted something to the effect that they no longer accept books.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the name of the organization, but he posted an alternative that we're going to be shipping them out to, and they'll still get there.
All right, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. So you've been how many times have you been on Ethan's stream?
I believe twice. But 3 times, but essentially twice, because that night with Scott Kurtz, I was just kind of there for the show like everyone else.
All right. From now on, what you need to do is when you get the invite, you need to sneak that over into my DMs.
Yeah,
that's the price of you being here tonight.
You got it.
Just kidding, Ethan. I promise. Don't kill me. But all right. So all right. So tell me, from your perspective, what happened that night with Mr. Kurtz?
Sure. Well, it started off like a normal show, like everything was going good. And at some point, I can't remember if it was Tug or who it was, but someone pointed out, like, hey, someone named Scott Kurtz is in the chat. And, Ethan and everyone else had the same reaction of like, oh, that's got to be a dummy account. There's no way that's actually him. And, the guy was like, no, it's me. And so, Doug was in the chat, and Doug, was like, well, I'm, me and him go way back, and we're friends on Facebook. I can get him in here. And yeah, like 5 minutes later, all of a sudden there's, Scott Kurtz staring at me on on the screen.
I tell you, initially I gave him credit for showing up, because I was like, you know what, nobody ever shows up.
Yeah, exactly. And like I wanted, I knew that as heavy as the atmosphere was, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get much in, but I wanted to take the time to kind of try to de-escalate things and start things on a friendly note, because I wanted the opportunity to say to him, like, hey man, like I might not be a huge fan of PvP, but I enjoy some of the stuff that you do with the Penny Arcade guys. And I was sad to see that partnership end. But yeah, like pretty much right from the start, they were just going at each other.
Yeah. And I knew you were never going to get the guy to agree. I mean,
Right.
nobody was ever going to get to see eye to eye with him. But I thought it was really disingenuous. Well, a lot of the stuff was because I'm kind of like Doug in that it would be great. I feel like it would be great if we could talk some of these people down, and not talk down to them, but kind of talk them down from the everybody's the devil type deal that seems to be going on.
Yeah.
But at the same time, sometimes you try, and they'll do is they'll kind of calm down a little bit, and then as soon as like you extend the hand, they go right after biting it again. And it seems like that's what this guy did. He kind of calmed down a little bit, and he was like, first when they were like, "Look, you said you cried over this thing," and he's like, "Yeah, I did." And it's, doesn't make me less of a man, makes you less of a man. That kind of, he kind of went into that spiel,
Right.
But then he would calm down a little bit, and he says, "Look, I just want everybody to get along." And then suddenly he was all up in talking about Ethan's ex-wife, and he wasn't. He didn't explicitly say it, but you could see he kind of leaned back in his chair, and he got that smug look on his face, and then he was like, "How bad did she hurt you?"
Right, exactly.
And once he started doing that, I'm like, dude thinks he's a Bond villain. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to get Ethan to get upset because everybody called him a soy boy, or at least in his mind, everybody was calling him a soy boy for crying about the book or whatever. And he thought maybe, well, I'm going to get a little bit on Ethan. Maybe I can get him to cry, and then everybody will call him a soy boy. That's the impression I got.
Yeah, me too, unfortunately, for the most part. That whole thing, I too am of the mindset of like when it comes to drama, I don't engage with any of that nonsense. I treat Comicsgate as a business, and that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to do business. If someone wants to have a conversation with me, I'm willing to have a conversation. But yeah, like I'm of the mind of it would be nice if we could just start a dialogue. And that's why I give people like Antonio, of Brand. That's why I give Antonio so much credit, because it feels like he has the personality type that I feel can start building those bridges. Like he had Anna Ascension, he had Sanford Green. Like people that work in mainstream comics have been on a Comicsgate talk show, and I feel like that's a big start.
Yeah, like and what it something like that does, like what he did in that attitude, what it does is it makes people less likely to want to talk to the other side.
Exactly,
because they're going to look at something like that, and it's like it almost seems like, oh, every time we try to be nice to somebody, then they come back with that, and that doesn't help either side. And if we do it on our side, I haven't seen it that much, but I'm not one of these guys that says, oh, we're all angels and they're all devils.
Sure,
because I know it happens on our side sometimes. The big names don't do it a whole lot, but I know it happens. So we shouldn't be doing that either. If they want to talk and we talk and everything is civil, that's perfectly fine. We can, you know, we can have our disagreements without thinking the other guy's, you know, evil.
Right.
But if you draw somebody in and then you come back with that stab, then everybody's like, oh, see, you can't trust these people.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, it's basically like it's that thing that Joe Rogan says a lot. Like, if you gather 10 people into a room, what are the chances that one of them is an idiot? Well,
Yeah.
it's practically 100%. So, you know, if you have something like Comicsgate, which isn't even a formal movement, it's just this loose collection of like fans and professionals and aspiring professionals, and you know, it's like thousands and thousands of people. Like, of course, there are going to be some people where you're like, nothing they're saying reflects anything that I'm doing, but that doesn't mean that the core principles of Comicsgate are flawed. You know?
Yeah, I think there's a lot, because there's kind of two parts of Comicsgate.
Mm-hmm.
There's the consumer part, and then there's the creator part. And it's almost, sometimes I feel like, well, they should really be separate, because the consumer part is almost has different issues than what the creator part has, because the guys like Ethan and Mike Miller, who have been in the trenches and the creator side and have seen what happens if you engage in wrongthink.
Right.
I mean, those guys have a different experience. It's similar, but it's a little bit different than the average consumer, who just, you know, gets called a Nazi by, you know, whoever it is, Mark Waid or whoever. And I mean, they don't really know Mark Waid. Mark Waid is just some you know, kind of, you know, he's somebody that's kind of distanced from them. There's no real personal relationship between Mark Waid and, you know, the average guy that buys a Mark Waid comic.
Right.
So it's really a different experience, and although they're similar, it's something that needs to be I don't know, handled. It gets handled differently.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing to make peace with, because you know, right around the time that my wife and I were about to commit to going down this road, was when the whole thing with that disagreement with Ethan and some of the older Comicsgate guys happened, and Ethan was like, well, then I'm not Comicsgate, I'm just a self-publisher.
Yeah.
That was when that was around the time that whole thing happened. And so there was a while there where I was like, well, I guess we're just going to keep being independent publishers and we'll try to build an audience. But I'm glad he was able to reconcile that, because while it is tricky and it is two different sides of a problem, like, they are still two sides of a problem, and I feel like both the consumers and the professionals can work together towards one goal. It's just not always. Sometimes it's easier for them.
Yeah, they really need each other,
right?
And when Ethan, quote unquote, left Comicsgate was a few months ago, at first I was kind of, I mean, I was more or less on his side, but again, we needed that strong communication, because things can't get better if you don't have those two sides working together, or at least knowing what the other side was doing. It seemed like he was getting attacked for stuff that, to me, it's like I said, we're not all angels on one side.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people, we had that idea, or maybe not a lot. There were a few loud people, I would say, that had that idea that they were entitled to his attention,
right,
and entitled to the attention of the big names. And that's never been me, and I never really understood that. I mean, I think it's one of those things. It's great that he gets you on his show, and it would be great if, you know, at some point when I've got a project up and running, that I can get on his show. But I don't feel like he has to. Like, he has no obligation to me. He's some stranger that, you know, writes comic books in New Jersey. I'm just a guy that buys comics, and hopefully hopefully he'll be nice enough to have me on his show when we're ready to go with our project.
Yeah, totally. Like, my wife and I take the same approach. Like, we started being in touch with him before we were even like officially Comic Skate or anything. And so he was kind of aware of us. And when I saw, or I should say when I heard that whole thing play out with that weird British couple who started like a podcast,
that was bizarre.
Like when I heard that startup, I'm like, okay, like when it comes to all future interactions with Ethan, I have to be really careful and make it really clear that, look, I don't think I'm entitled to anything. Like, you're just a guy, I'm just a guy, and anything that you do for me is just, icing on the cake.
Mm-hmm.
So, and, like, so far, so good.
Yeah, it seemed like there was, because we had that couple, then we had that other couple, that other girl who was for, I mean, she seemed like solid for a little while. Then for whatever reason, I don't even know what happened. All of a sudden she turned, like all of a sudden, what was her name? Her husband was a trucker. She was a trucker or something like that.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it seems weird. They get on board, and then for whatever reason, sorry. And for whatever reason, to me, the only thing I can think of is that entitlement. But I mean, again, also, I'm not behind the scenes with a lot of these people either. I don't know what's going on with DMs or personal emails and all that stuff, and I don't want to know. That's all personal business.
Sure. I mean, well, and again, I don't know either. So a lot of this is just me speculating, but I think a lot of it comes down to some of these people aren't, quote unquote professionals. Like they see the surface level. They see everyone hanging out on Ethan's stream, having a good time and, building an audience and generating profit. And they go, well, that's all there is to it. I just have to do that. And all of a sudden my whole life will change.
Yeah.
And it's like, nope. Like, and, I think we're fortunate enough that we've been doing this for, like close to 10 years now. So we know what a grind it can be. So I think we're fortunate enough in that we don't have that thing of like placing too many expectations on an uninterrupted chain of things happening flawlessly,
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they see all these faces on his show, and they think, oh, he just picked random people off the street. But I mean, he's known Mike for years. He's known, well, I don't know how long he's known Doug.
Right.
But I mean, Doug came to him, and Doug has a history. He's already got an established. He's done graphic novels. He's done animation. He's got a background history with hard work and stuff like that.
Right.
And all these people, they've worked hard to get where they're at, and they just happen to catch his notice. And and again, his show is an entertainment show, so a lot of time, especially if they've got a really engaging personality or a way of talking, that kind of stuff. If they've got a story that people like, that's entertaining to everybody, that's another way that gets on his show. Everybody's just like, oh, I've got a project I can get on Ethan's show.
Right. And I feel like that's where you get some of the personalities from, like Cecil. Like Cecil was just a guy who had this like Andy Kaufman-ish shtick to him,
Yeah, he started when I first got getting into Comic Skate. He started a couple of months after me. I started seeing him show up on Zach's stream. And at first, when he had it was the diversity and whatever, the whole long thing. I was like, oh, he's just some, just some guy doing a little riff or whatever. And I watched his show. I'm like, wow, this guy's actually really funny.
Yeah.
And he used to do the accent thing a lot more. He used to like really, really play it up.
Right. And now it's
a lot less now.
More. Yeah.
You can tell because when he's just on the stream, He's just got that Long Island kind of New Yorkie accent. But when
Right.
he's doing the movie reviews, he really plays it up and really plays up the kind of lilting, effeminate thing a little more.
Exactly. Yeah, I pretty much had the same reaction. Like I noticed I noticed Zach bringing him up once in a while, and like I to be honest didn't think much at first, and then the more he would pop up and the more I pay attention, like I got what he was trying to do. And like I have like such an appreciation for that guy. He's so funny.
He's already doing that. We're looking because John Malin's up right now live, but I think he's got somebody else on his show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So when did you first really? What was your first experience? Either just hearing about it that you can remember, or thinking, hey, this is kind of like what we're into, the comic skate thing.
Well, around the time that the Diversity in Comics channel started, his videos started drifting into my feed, and to be honest, like at first I wasn't a fan per se, because like I I thought some of those early videos were it just felt like he was trying a little too hard.
Mm-hmm.
And but like I sat down one afternoon and there was a video that I think was like 20 or 25 minutes long, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna listen to this, straight through. And by the end of it, I was like, okay, I don't agree with everything that he's saying, but the stuff that I do agree with, I really agree with. And like I've said before, like he's a problem solver. He's really good at like just putting a spotlight on one specific thing and being like, here's why this doesn't work and here's what you need to do about it.
He's very insightful. One thing he's good at that I'm not is, and maybe I don't know how much he practices doing his videos. When I do like critique videos, I have a hard time a lot of times explaining. I have a hard time explaining. I can say, all right, this is a certain way, and I know I don't like it. I have a hard time really putting it into words. What exactly is going on in the comic? I mean, that I don't like. I know there's something specific, but he's very good at putting into words and coming up with examples of why this is. I've seen this. I've seen this in other areas. He's good at relating it to other topics, and that's where he does a lot of that with his military experience. Because I remember he told a story one time, and it was like, oh, when he was in the military, there was one time he just did a whole bunch of pull-ups or something, and he jumped in the middle of somebody else's conversation. It was like, oh, I just did 30 pull-ups or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And he said, he guess he wasn't always, I guess he's not now, the most social of people.
Right.
So he used that example, and he's like, this is why, I mean, this happened to me, and I had to learn that, you can't just do that. And this is how it relates to this comic that I'm looking at right now. I always remember that, for whatever reason, that's one little story.
Sure.
I remember, I don't know why, and I think it was because I was looking up comic book stuff on Google. I don't know if the things relate to YouTube. Maybe it was I think I was watching some stuff on YouTube on comic books. And I think it was the same thing. He kind of popped up in my home screen. So I'm like, oh, I'll check this guy out. And it was the same kind of thing. It's just a guy on his cell phone talking about comic books. I'm like, oh, he seems like a regular type of guy. And that's when I think I was one of the first few thousand followers that he had. It was, I mean, he had just started like a few weeks earlier that I could remember. And then the Shake thing hit. And then that's when really Comicsgate, that I know, what I know is Comicsgate, really started right around then.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think I was in that group too, of like the first couple thousand to subscribe to him. And I started writing to him and just being like, look, as someone who lives in Portland, who has been in on some of these meetings and interacted with some of these people. Like, I don't know how you're guessing, X, Y, and Z about what these problems are,
Mm-hmm.
but you're completely right. And so yeah, just every once in a while, like I would drop him a line and be like, yeah, that's totally a thing. And I guess little by little he began to trust that, like, I wasn't um I don't know, like the British couple or whatever. And started getting responses from him. And it's not like we're friends or anything, but like, once in a while I'll write him, and like I'll get the odd email from him. And it's usually, he really is short and to the point. Like, it's usually just one sentence.
Oh
But
yeah, well, the
I get
guy gets probably like 1,000 emails a day.
exactly. But yeah, like I don't know. Like I think he's overall a decent guy, and some of the stuff that I disagreed with him about, I feel he's bent over backwards to make recompense for.
Yeah, I think I sent him a couple of emails. I don't expect a response back because it was looking back. I mean, there was nothing stalkery or anything like that. But looking back, I'm like, yeah, it's a little, whatever. I don't expect him to respond back. But my artist actually, Paul Dozier, I was talking to him the other day. He just got an email back. We were talking. He's like, I just got an email from Zach. He's like, it was a response to something I sent to him 2 years ago.
Yeah, he's yeah, like he's been saying in his videos, like I'm sure he's flooded, especially with all the work that he's been doing on these two books.
That's another thing I don't understand, especially the couple of people I feel like they seem like they're entitled to his attention. If they're entitled, that would mean the thousands of other people that send these guys emails and DMs and whatever, they must all be entitled to his time too. How much time does he have to all these entitled people?
Exactly.
It's like he's some kind of robot or magical genie or something where he's got so much more time than everybody else in the world. His days are 24 hours long, just like everyone else.
Well, it's like any other, type of media. Like, you have that certain personality type who uh latches onto whatever media figure, be they a YouTube person or like a musician or whatever, and you think that your experience with them is going to be the same experience that they have with you. And that's, when you get to where someone like, Ethan or Richard's at, it's like that's just not how it is. Like, there's 300 people just like you writing them pretty much the exact same email every day.
Yeah, well, it's like a bottleneck of attention, because like if they're in a, like, we'll take a convention for example. If Ethan's sitting there at a convention, maybe 200 or 300 people or however many will talk to him, and for you, you're one person who talked to him, and for your experience, it's one on one. His experience sitting on the other side of the table is it was 300 people that he shook hands with or said hi to or signed a book for.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
for you, it's memorable. To him, I mean, it's not. I'm sure he remembers some people, but like I met him at a convention last year. I don't know if he'd ever remember me. I mean,
right.
our conversation was short, but I don't know if we ever bumped into each other on the street, I'd recognize him, but he's not going to be like, hey, that was like I met you at that convention last year. Well, that's what it's like to me, and that's one of the biggest problems with social media, I think, is everybody thinks that their encounter is one on one when you've got somebody who's uber popular. That's not their experience.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even, like I said, my wife and I do like 2 to 3 FCBD store signings every year. And even on something as small a scale like that, it still takes us 3 to 4 years before, like, we start recognizing faces and memorizing names, you know, because like at this point we have, you know, like a small collection of, you know, fans who have become like you know, really dear to us over the years. And you know, it never starts out that way. It's this gradual thing. And you know, if you don't have that experience, it's hard for you to understand the concept of there is no such thing as one to one when you're dealing with a huge pool of people.
Yeah. How many like when you're doing a signing, about how you where do you do them? You doing it like a local bookstore, local comic store?
Yeah, you know, like we haven't really done conventions for a few years now because they're just not they're not economically viable for us. Especially like in the Pacific Northwest, like a lot of these shows they can be enjoyable to attend, but working them, like it's that whole thing of like they're shows where you go to be seen, not to necessarily make money.
Hmm.
Um these days we mostly just do store signings. You know, we'll do, you know, Christmas signings, we'll do, you know, Halloween signings, but the big one that we do year in and year out is FCBD. Like that's kind of our Christmas.
Okay, we got in the chat, we got Scotty Richard Studios says he did the Jawbreakers toy art, and after that, he all Zach always responded to him. Well, that's a way to get into his memory a little more, I would imagine.
Exactly.
And the metal says, I don't expect anyone to remember me, but you know what? I'll always remember you. The metal,
Oh.
probably.
Can you handle the chat for a minute? I got a baby emergency.
Absolutely, you handle your baby.
All right.
All right. So if anybody else has got any questions, we've only got a few people in here, but if anybody else has any questions, I'm sending Mrs. Dave Comics to other live chats to let them know that we're giving away 2 free comic books for anybody that missed that part. 2 Ethan Van Skyvers. I've tweeted it. So if you follow me on Twitter, I tweeted a picture of the 2 comics. So if you've already followed me and you want to check that out, it's actually a response to his tweets. So if you go to Mike Murphy, you follow Mike Murphy for sure. He's at Chibi Mike. If you follow him, you get to see. I took a picture of the 2 comics that I'll be giving away. 2 lucky backers. What we're gonna do is probably, like I said, I'll have him pick the 2 people, the 2 backers, and we'll make arrangements so that we're not doxing anybody and not giving anybody's away private information. Let's see what else. And did anybody else see that chat on Saturday with what's his name, Kurtz, Scotty Kurtz? Good Lord, that guy. It's way over the line. Way over the line when he was talking about Ethan's wife there. I mean, I can understand if you're going to argue with somebody, argue over their ideas. That's a perfectly legit argument. People are going to disagree. No 2 people should agree on anything 100%. I don't care if you voted for the same people or if, you know, generally you're in the same political party or whatever it is. Even though, you know, it doesn't have to be politics. But no 2 people should ever agree on anything 100%. And you can argue that. And there's some fun, to me, there's fun in getting those arguments out and talking stuff out, even if at the end you still disagree, at least you know at least you know where everybody stands, and you can deal with people a lot easier knowing where they stand. And if you can trust people, even if they don't hold the same views as you, if you can trust them on a one-on-one to either have your back or at least treat you with civility, then it's fine if people disagree. Yeah, Scotty Richards said that guy just proved what CG is all about. Exactly. The way he yelled at Tug, and he, man, it really, and you could really see it at the end. When I was talking about, if you watch that video, he sat back, sat back in his chair, and he kind of folded his arms, and he got that smug look on his face. Like, it was almost like, oh, I got you now, Ethan. I got you now. I'm going to talk about your ex-wife, and you're going to get all emotional, and then I'm going to win because I got emotional over Mike setting a piece of paper on fire. Like, man. And if it's true, there's one of two things. Either he actually got emotional about setting a piece of paper on fire or drawing over it or whatever he claims was the issue, or he didn't cry about it and was just making points, trying to score points with his NPC buddies by posting it on Facebook. Look, see, I said he cried, and then look how Mike responded. He was all like mean to me because I told him I cried, and then he responded with mean stuff. You can't deal with people like that. Yeah, exactly. That's what what CG is all about. I've talked about this before when the Gillette thing came out. They're talking about what masculinity is, and masculinity has to do a lot of it with your biology, obviously, but with your overall biology in relationship to the quote unquote the generally more emotional gender. Women generally, as a rule, are more emotional than guys, but they're also smaller. If you got a guy that's 50% stronger, the average guy is, this much stronger, 50%, 30%, whatever it is, than the average woman. And you don't want that guy being an emotional mess, getting upset and crying and lashing out over the slightest little thing. Because that's where you run into problems. That's where you have problems with, guys thinking that because their emotions take over, that's where they're thinking they're entitled to certain things from women or other people, because in their head they have it. Oh, this bad thing has happened to me. I'm feeling sad about it. I'm entitled to feel good. Nobody's entitled to feel good. Nobody's entitled to, positivity. You're not entitled to anything in this world. I'm going to say you're entitled to what you can take, but I don't mean that in that, oh, we should be able to just steal whatever we want or whatever. But you gotta recognize your opportunities, and you gotta know what it is that you can take advantage of, and you have to do it. You have to do it without hurting other people, at least not intentionally. I mean, ultimately, every decision you make, career-wise or whatever, somebody may or may not get hurt. This guy says, I make money doing cons in Texas. I like the mid-sized cons rather than the big ones with the big-name guests, which overshadow the artists. But they need those. And the problem is they kind of need those big guests to draw in more people. So how do you reconcile that? Because, obviously you want to make more money, but if you don't have the big names, how are you? Because I was looking, I want to do a con this year, and I don't know if I'll be able to do it. The biggest one that's closest to me is the East Coast Con, and that's in New Jersey. Huge names, a lot of big names. I'm not an artist on Artist Alley. I'm going to go as just, somebody get some signatures. That's going to be my thing for a while. I think I want to collect as many signatures as I can. But I'm not going to go to a convention that doesn't have any big names, because it's not really worth my time to get the signatures that I want to get. I want all those big names. But does that really does big names take away from your tables? You know what? I can see why that would. I can see why that would. Because people, I kind of did it when I was at the convention, the Ethan convention. Because I looked up who the biggest names were, and those were the tables I went to. I probably should have looked at some of the other tables and looked at some of the other books, to help out the smaller artists. So I can see how you'd get kind of flooded over, looked over with stuff like that. I can see we're mid-sized con. You definitely don't want to be at a small con. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how all that works. All right. So once again, You're watching the Indie Dave Comics channel. We're talking about Samurai and Dinosaurs. If you haven't gone to the Indiegogo just to even look at it, it looks like a really cool. It's a really cool kind of very indie style. Very. I'm trying to think of what it reminds me of. It doesn't remind me of the Ninja Turtles as far as style goes. If the big names are pro art, Scotty Richard again. If the big names are pro artists rather than the Walking Dead TV show actors, then yeah, I can see that. I can see because most of the cons that I look at, it's a lot of TV and movie stars, and it kind of draws away because you're attracting people that aren't. You're attracting a crowd that isn't necessarily comic book fans. You're attracting the CW fans. Has anybody found? I think I've discussed this on Twitter with some people last year sometime. That the Marvel movies, oddly enough, draw people to the DC characters because they go and see a Marvel movie, and when they go to if they go to the comic store at all, because it seems to me like you'll get two different crowds, or you get two or three different crowds. You get the people that'll see the movies and say, "Oh, I want the comic book." You'll also get the people that'll see the movie and say, "Oh, the movie's enough," and then you get the people that see the movie and is like, "Yeah, maybe I'll see something else later." But for the people that see the movies and then go to the shops, what I was hearing from a few people was somebody goes to their comic shop after seeing the Avengers, and they're like, "Oh, I want to pick up an Iron Man comic." And they pick up a comic and it's got Riri Williams on the cover. They're like, "Who's this?" Excuse me. And the guy at the comic store is like, "Oh, yeah, Iron Man's not in that." They're like, "All right, well, what about Thor? Let me see a Thor comic." They pick up a Thor comic and it's a woman. They're like, "What's this?" "Oh yeah, that Thor's not in this comic." And then they go down the line a little bit, and then they're like, "Okay, well, what can I get that's on the?" And they're like, "Well, is Superman still Clark Kent?" Spoiler alert! Crap! Did I spoil that for anybody? Superman's Clark Kent. I'm sorry, I just ruined Superman for everybody. But they go to the store and they're like, "Well, Superman's still Clark Kent," and they're like, "Oh yeah, Superman's still Clark Kent. What about Batman? Batman's still Bruce Wayne? Oh yeah, Batman's still Bruce Wayne." So then instead of picking up the comics they wanted, they're going to pick up, the opposite company. So, excuse me. And there was another thing which was really, to me, would be really confusing to the customer, was Marvel did not do their marketing well with the Deadpool 2 movie. Yeah, it's like bad Turkish knockoff comics. Scotty Richard. Yeah, but they did this thing. They did this thing with can everybody hear my dog chewing on stuff in the background? They did this thing with the Deadpool 2 movie came out. The Domino character, was a woman of color. She was cool in that movie. I thought she was badass. But if you went and picked up, they released Domino #1 like almost the same month. The Gail Simone, Domino #1, and you look at the girl in the movie, and you look at the comic book, and you're like, "Hey, how come they put a white girl in the comic?" Oh, hey, Mike's back.
Yeah, I'm back.
All right, we're talking about when you go to the movies, and then you go to the comic shop, and the guys that are in the movies are not in the comic books.
Yes,
and I was just bringing up, to me, what was a really prime example was the Deadpool 2 movie, where you had a really cool, badass Domino character in the movie. And then the same month, the Gail Simone Domino comic came out. And if somebody went to the comic store and they're like, "What happened to the one that was in the movie?" And they're going to think that Marvel whitewashed the character. And they're like, "No, it's different." But why would you release these two characters? If they were going to do it, they should have, at the same time, I don't know if rebooted the character or something for the comic book. Had the one that people were seeing in the movie.
Sure.
Because to me, that was ridiculous marketing.
Yeah, I used to, when it comes to swapping in like, race and gender and all that stuff. I used to be fairly middle of the road, but as I'm getting older, like I'm more of the mindset of like, look, like I have no problem with like whatever type of person you want to fold into like the DC or the Marvel universe. I couldn't care less, but just introduce a new character. I mean, if nothing else, like doesn't that give the character more agency than just being like, oh well, I'm Thor, but I have breasts. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
and the problem with that was Thor was a name; it's not a title.
yeah, that drove me up the wall.
And the Flash, I think did it well because they went through the different Barry Allen, and then the other I can't remember his name. I'm
Well,
blanking. Yeah, so they did it, and to me they did that well. Wally West, that's when, yeah, Wally West. They did that well, and people generally, I mean, I guess at first they didn't like it, but then they really warmed up to the Wally West character.
sure,
They
yeah,
can that you can do that. You can even do that with a Captain America, but if you're going to do that, then you have to get rid. You have to give him a hero's death or some kind of crazy mysterious disappearance, maybe a retirement, something. If you're going to do that to make, if you want to do a race swap, a completely different character, you can
sure,
say, okay, this guy is prepped to take the mantle of Captain America. You could
sure.
have had Rhodey could have been prepped to take the mantle of Iron Man.
Yeah, like I have no problem with the idea of, making a character a legacy character, but to me, regardless of, what their race or gender is, like to as a writer, to me it's all about that character has to earn the right to say that they're now that name. Like the example that I always use is when they made Renee Montoya the Question.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she was a character that had a legacy going as far back as the animated series, and then they folded her into Gotham Central, and it was years of like building that character up, and by the time she took over in 52, like that felt like a really strong impactful moment, and it felt like she earned it,
Mm-hmm. I think the worst the worst reboot was the New 52 Lobo. Did you see that one?
No. Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh my god, that was the worst. He was like all princely and blah blah blah, and oh, that was the. I wasn't big in. I was never really big into DC anyway. But when
Mhm.
I saw that one, I was like, oh my god, that's terrible. I liked a lot of the Rebirth stuff, but that New 52 was terrible.
Yeah, like I enjoyed Animal Man and like a few other books during New 52, but yeah, like that was definitely during a time when DC completely lost me. And like they had me for like 2 or 3 years with Rebirth. Like um Tomasi's Superman run is like one of my favorite arcs on that character, period.
Yeah, the beginning of the Rebirth Superman. Actually, I was never a Superman guy, only because he seemed like, to me, was kind of a simple character, not
Uh-huh.
simple minded, but it was okay. He's a guy that can pretty much do everything.
Sure.
That's kind of how I saw him, and I saw the Rebirth stuff where they brought in the family and he had a son and all that stuff, and that's maybe because I'm older. That
Mhm.
stuff really connected with me a little more. That
Yeah,
was I was really liking all that.
yeah, and then Didio and Bendis were like, "Hey, how about we scrap all of that?"
And I know the Super Sons were really popular. At least a lot of people that I follow seem to really like that one.
It was. I mean, I'm a big Superman fan. Like he's the first thing I ever drew, and in terms of superhero characters, like he's my favorite. Like that whole run, and even if you fold in, Jurgens on Action Comics, that whole run was really one big story, like Superman, Action, and Super Sons. And it was just so good, and it moved the character forward in a way that made sense without seeming tacked on or forced. And Tomasi just really got the character, and like every arc was like this like perfect love letter to like different eras of Superman that I really dig. Like there was a nice tip of the hat to Darwin Cook. Um, there was there was a whole thing with that the generic authority group that Joe Kelly created. Like so much of that stuff was just so perfectly executed. And like, not saying anything about him personally, but like just creatively, when I heard Bendis was taking over Superman, I was like, dude, like your sensibilities don't line up with what that book is, and I know your first instinct is going to be to stop making that book what it is.
Yeah. Have you been? Have you been a Superman guy from the beginning?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, oddly enough, like I remember seeing the Christopher Reeve film when I was like 4 or 5, and I didn't really like it until like I was a teen and an adult.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, pretty much my whole life, I dig Superman.
Cool. I was always I was originally a Ninja Turtles guy. I don't collect much Ninja Turtles now,
Oh, nice.
but I was originally a Ninja Turtles guy. The original Ninja Turtles. I was
Right.
like shocked when I went. I went to one of my cousin's house, and it was, I don't know if it was on a Happy Meal or something. He was on they had the cartoon turtles on. I was like, and I looked at it, and they looked different, but obviously, all the traits were there. And I was like, "Is this Ninja Turtles?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." I was like, "How do you know about this?" Because I always thought it was like an indie comics, like not everybody knew about it.
Right.
And he was like, "No, it's a TV show." I was like, "What?"
Yep. Yeah, like as a kid, my first exposure to the Turtles was like the oversized European trade of like the first 5 issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, like I mean, I was into the cartoon and like the Archie run. But like that first version of them was always like the definitive version in my head.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, what else did I collect back then? I was never, well, no, I eventually I got into, I was Marvel, New Mutants type stuff. Well, New Mutants was the first one. One of my friends was a big GI Joe guy, so I would read all his GI Joe comics. But my first real ones were the New Mutants. So I got into it at the Fall of the Mutants.
Okay.
That's about the era I came in at, and then I was more or less Marvel, up after that. There were, yeah, it was, so most of the time when I got in, it was really when the collectors bubble really started picking up. So I got caught up in that. I was a kid and I was thinking, oh, these comics are going to pay for my college.
Right, right.
I sold all of them and barely had enough to buy my dog. So.
Exactly. Yeah, as a kid, I was always, a DC guy. Marvel was something that like I had to grow into. And by the time I was in my late teens and 20s, there was a lot about Marvel that I appreciated.
Yeah. Let's see. I did have. I can't think of any. I was a straight Marvel boy, right from when I was heavy into it, and I wasn't really, because after high school, all my priorities disappeared. I had to start actually paying bills,
Right.
paying for college and that kind of stuff. Yeah, Scotty Richards says early Usagi Yojimbo blew my mind. I remember seeing that on the shelf. I remember seeing a lot of stuff on the shelf, the Usagi Yojimbo and
Totally.
Cerebus, and a lot of the 2000 AD type stuff, the Judge Dreads and the Strontium Dog and all that stuff. I remember. I don't know why. I do know why, because I was a kid and didn't have hardly any money. So I was like, all right, I'm Ninja Turtles. I was straight Ninja Turtles up until I started having a little bit extra money. Got my first job and then wasted all that money on comics.
Yeah, like my first two comics were Sword of the Atom #1 and Gumby Summer Special, which I later in life found out was drawn by Arthur Adams.
Mm-hmm.
And then from then, like, my dad would take me to comic shops once in a while, but like mostly where I got my books from was the grocery store. And like there was this really sweet spot in the late 80s and early 90s where dollar stores would get overstock printings of like fringe manga and European books. Like they like my dollar store had a lot of like 2000 AD reprints and Viz reprints like Golgo 13 and just really books that kids shouldn't be reading, but I totally read.
Yeah, my dad didn't appreciate everything. I bought let's see, I'm trying to think of some of the companies back then that aren't around anymore. Eternity, I think, was one of them.
Yep.
I had a Samurai, and it was a female samurai. It was all fan service.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my dad looking at that one, and he was like, "Yeah, I need to keep an eye on what you're buying." And it wasn't like there was a lot of sex. It was just that she was, scantily clad ninja girl.
Right. Yeah, and like growing up in Chicago, Now Comics, do you remember them?
Yeah, I do remember. I don't remember anything they put, but I remember the name.
Yeah. Like for a while they had the Terminator license, like that was Alex Ross's first professional work. They had that, they had Ralph Snart, like, so I had pretty easy access to like all those weird obscure books. So yeah, like growing up, the stuff that I had access to, I think informed a lot of like how weird and all over the place my tastes are as an adult now.
Yeah, like now I'll walk in. I have certain stuff on my pull list. I never know actually what's coming in at any given time. Like my store does a little video every Tuesday. They probably put one out tonight. Every Tuesday, just before Free Comics Day, and they do like a quick rundown of what came out.
Okay.
And what you can pick up tomorrow. Excuse me. And so basically, it's always a surprise what's going to end up in my pull, because when I see the video the night before, then I'm like, oh, I'm getting that today and that today. And then while I'm looking, they do like, all right, because they have, okay, this is the Marvel section. I say, oh, Marvel, this came out, and don't forget to pick up this one and that one. They go to the DC section, do the same thing. And usually once they get to the indies, then I'm like, okay, what's interesting? Looks like they came out. And so what I'll do is I'll pick up my my pull list, and then I'll wander around the store. I'll wander around the indie section and see what's coming, what looks interesting.
Yeah,
and guess what? Man of Sex is in here. How's it going, man?
Yay!
Hey, man.
Hey. You're just gonna call me man
too. We're gonna call you Man of Sweet Lovemaking. How's that?
I'm good with that. Man of sensuality.
There you go.
It's good to talk to you again.
Good to talk to you as well. How's everyone doing tonight?
Pretty good. I sent out a few extra invites. Hopefully we'll get some people in here.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, we're trying to get. Looks like we got you another. Or I don't know if we got you, but we got you got another, at least another book or two. Totals up to 3480. So we need to get you to 8,000 tonight. You got how many? What do you got left for time?
So it's 6 o'clock my time, so about 6 hours.
Yeah, 6 hours left to get him. Let's see, 3480. We'll do some quick math. So about 4,500, right? Is my math right? So we need about $4,500 in the next 6 hours. And again, not only are you getting a Samurai and Dinosaurs graphic novel, you are entered in the opportunity to win one of 2 signed Ethan Van Sciver comic books that I will be providing.
It's a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah, and I got to meet the man himself, and got some books signed, and hopefully that sweetens the pot for you enough to get people to buy your book.
Did you get to kiss his ring?
No, I didn't need to kiss his ring, but know what I did get is I got him to do a thing for my channel, one of those. Hey, you're watching Indie Cave Comics YouTube channel. I got him to do one of those little bumpers for me.
Hi, I'm Ethan Van Scribern, and you're watching Indie Cave.
Yeah. he actually got my name right, unlike me. Did you see that? Did you see that last night? Were you on Man of Sex last night?
I was.
Oh my god, I botched that so bad. I think Mike's was the only name I got right, and he didn't come until later. I got every single person's name wrong.
Yeah,
no, I think I got Crystal's right. I think, but
I missed this legendary opening. Everyone's been telling me about it.
Oh, it was terrible. The whole
Sean Luke was not happy.
the whole stream was just one botch up after another.
I think it would. You could even make that your signature.
Yeah, botch up every. Well, see, the whole point of my channel, at least, I'm going to do the chats every once in a while, and what I prefer to do the one-on-ones, because then we can concentrate on that book. And a lot of times it's hard to get. I mean, you can only talk so much about the book. You don't want to give spoilers away and that kind of stuff. But I like the one-on-one is a lot easier for me, and I don't have to switch screens around all that much. So I wasn't used to doing a lot of that stuff. I'm probably going to have to do a practice stream at some point where I can try to do that with a little less effort. And then I muted or what's his name? I muted one guy, Derek, I think, Michael Derek. I muted him because his radio kept going off, and then he wandered off.
Yeah, the security.
Yeah, so I muted him just so the radio wasn't bothering us all the time. And then it seemed like no matter what I did, I couldn't unmute him. And then he would unmute, and I would mute him right back.
Right, because once you mute someone, they have to unmute themselves.
And you know what? I thought that's probably what was going on.
It's so great to have the Google Hangouts on YouTube Live now, because in the past, I used to do something similar like this with like Instagram artists and musicians and such, and I would have to do it through Skype and do all these workarounds just to forward it, or do like OBS and just record my screen. So the Hangouts makes it so much better now, because you can just go on and kind of like make a talk show in a sense.
Yeah, I try to keep it as simple as possible, because of I knew last night kind of thing was going to happen. But yeah, I'll get it straight eventually. I'll probably I might end up doing the OBS at some point.
That radio of his was cracking me up.
It was really funny. I think that could be your signature. You gotta have your angle.
Yeah, so my angle is that I'm a complete idiot. I'm an old boomer. That's my signature. No, I like cracking on myself, because I mean, to me, that's if you can't laugh at yourself, I mean, you got no business laughing at anybody else. So to me, those are the best things where I can crack on myself.
There's a lot of us on Twitter that can't laugh at themselves or anything.
Yeah.
That's most of Twitter.
That's most of Twitter right now. Everyone's so serious.
All right, so what all right, man, since this is the first time we've had you on, have you been on anybody else's live stream? I haven't seen you around.
No, I've just been on my own pretty much. I haven't really tried to I'm not, really pushing any projects or anything like that. There was the only thing that's came out of me so far was that Friday night auctions thing, but that's not going to really need funding. That's going to be a little thing I'm doing, when I get some time free.
Yeah. So you have your own channel. You doing chats and stuff, doing live chats?
Yeah. Essentially, I was tossing around what I was going to do with my channel in the first place. It was at one time called Tired and Bored, and I said before, I had a lot of Instagram artists on there. I had some of my friends that are close friends. One of them's an illustrator in LA. The other one does, hip hop production, and he has a few of those bumpers on Adult Swim. So they're pretty interesting. I have a friend who's really high up on SoundCloud right now, which I don't even know that much about, but he's been on. Remember those old shows where it'd be like, oh, my kid's so bad, and they do the parent swamp?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's on a few of those episodes and some food truck like competition show with Tyler Florence, but he does a music career on SoundCloud. I was eventually going to get him on, but I'm pretty much heading this channel in is, I've been watching Comicsgate a lot now. I've been talking to a lot of the people, so I honestly, it's more about learning what's behind the comics and the people that are making it, and I just like to have conversation with everybody. I
Yeah.
think it'd be really fun and feature them.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about Zach, and I got Zach is the reason that I'm working on writing comics right now, because I wasn't. I mean, I used to collect comics a lot, and I would write stuff. I've never been published anywhere, but I used to write a lot, and then I'd watch some of Zach's videos, and I'd be like, man, I could write better than that. These comics that they're showing.
Yeah.
So then I was like, you know what? Let's try to put my money where my mouth is. So so that's what. Yeah. So I started. I found something online about how to do a script, just a basic layout of how and everybody does them a little bit differently. So I looked at a few different versions. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take this part from this script and that part from that script, and that's how I'll do it. So that's what I started doing. I started just writing scripts and stuff.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's real interesting stuff. I would, if I were to do any work on it, it would probably be some sort of script writing or writing of some sort, and then I could have someone like Jean-Luc just tear it apart. But the most interesting about Comicsgate is just like, the two of you in here. I feel like it's full of a bunch of people that are very motivated. They're doing hard work. It's just something you don't see much anymore. No one really does anything. And then it's really nice to see groups of people helping each other out that do things that aren't, fighting all the time. That's what I find the most attractive about Comicsgate. And I actually learned about Comicsgate. I've been following Ethan Van Sciver since he was like 10,000 subscribers. And when he just did the Star Wars videos, and I thought it was amazing that he was just yelling at his iPad. But I started more on the comics by Zach's video, because I found Zach via Ethan Van Sciver, because he'd drop his name or talk about him. He's like, oh yeah, this is what Zach was saying. I'm like, who's that? And then I watched Zach's video. I'm like, oh my God, this is even better. He doesn't even have an iPad. It's literally just a book on the bed.
He's in his Kia with a freaking
in his Kia with phone. Fast food yet again.
This guy got popular taking video of his crotch with a book in it.
Which is so amazing, because anytime, it's almost like we're going through a new phase of YouTube right now. Like, it was like this embellishment before. You always had to have the best cameras, the best sound equipment, the best things to get a great video, and now it's going through this kind of very modernist type of simplicity phase where you can take pictures of your crotch, and comics, and then get a following going. I think it's really interesting. It's more about the content now, not really all the bells and whistles.
Well, exactly, because they make it look easy, because again, it's his phone in his lap, or it's his phone. He's just walking around the city talking, and Ethan's got he's got a dozen iPads, and he's just pointing at them with a pencil. And from an outsider looking in, would say, "Man, that's easy. I can do that." And that's how I started my YouTube channel, but it's not that easy, because they're both actually really insightful. Zach has really good insights into all this stuff, and he's whatever the coughing and all that other stuff, he's well spoken as far as, I don't know how much he goes over it, but he really knows how to make his point.
Yeah, seeing someone like Zach, I'm sure he goes over it probably a few thousand times before he does it. He seems like he's a perfectionist. Ethan, I think, is just going off the cuff because he's really passionate about what he's talking about. Zach is as well. But I can't I'm the same way. Like, you eventually get it if you're practicing. The only way I was able to do it, I'm not even sure if you've seen any of my crazy videos. I go up and down of making it private or not private, but the only way I can do that personally is if I do a character, not myself. So I think it's impressive, and I say
it gets your head in a certain space.
Exactly,
and it helps with the voice. the voice in your head and getting your ideas out. It's like a focus.
The most impressive I still find right now is Umbrella Guy. How he can
That guy can talk forever.
That guy can talk, and he sounds like a pastor. I would like to ask him when he's going to be running for president because he can really talk.
Oh man, and he's got that head for numbers too. I can't remember.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember numbers for anything. I got to have it, and it's part of the reason why I fumbled everybody's name is because usually I'll write stuff down and I'll have it in front of me. And last night I just didn't. So I was like, oh, only the first name comes up. So I'm like, it's Mike, and there's another Mike, and that's
yeah.
I have to have everything right in front of me. If I don't, then it makes it really hard for me to get stuff out a lot. Even when I'm doing the intro to the show. I'll be like, hey, this is Indie Dave Comics channel. You're watching blah blah. I gotta have it in front of me. At least, if not exactly scripted out, then at least the basic idea of what I'm gonna have to say.
If I did that, I think I'd probably overthink it and then mess up over again.
Well, and what I used to do when I started doing the reviews on my, because I at first I thought, oh, I'm gonna be, and I didn't really think I was gonna be the next Zach, but I thought, oh, I'm gonna do those kind of videos. So I started doing that, and then I started doing. I'm like, well, maybe I should try a little better. So I would script the videos and do like little production videos, and where you actually edit them and you get the pictures in and all that stuff, and that's fun. I like doing that. But I find when I actually read from a script, it sounds like I'm reading from a script. That if I read word for word everything on the page, there's no mistaking that. Yeah,
and I like this comic because it has X me and
even if yes, exactly. Even if I've got all the ideas written out correctly to a point where I think it's interesting, my reading is what screws everything up. I try to do as much off the cuff as I can, but I still got to have at least the ideas written down on the page.
Yeah. So, Mike.
Yes.
Do you have a YouTube? I see you have a Tumblr. And then you're a contributor, to GameChronicles.com.
Yeah, I gotta update my Twitter profile. Yes, I do.
No longer.
Oh no, I'm still there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, like one of my freelance jobs is I review video games. But yeah, I do have a YouTube channel. I just started around the time that the campaign for Samurai launched. It's just the Chibi Mike, or you could just look up comics in current year.
Comics. All right, I'll get that down. I try to find, follow anyone's YouTube that we know here. So are you a fan of Jim Sterling?
I got a love-hate relationship with that guy. Like, sometimes I find that he makes interesting or valid points, and sometimes I just he's just so annoying. And when he keeps going on about paid content and that whole thing that he's so passionate about, like if I see it's one of those weeks, like I just don't tune in at all.
Yeah. But it seems to be like the last 6 episodes about AAA publishers, and it's like by a certain point, I get it. They suck. We know that though, because the video game is. I've been calling Steam by this point the trash bazaar.
Right.
That's pretty much all you're getting when you're in there anyway. And I can't even remember the trash bazaar.
The last thing I bought from Steam was Evil Genius. The Evil Genius game. Have you ever seen that one?
No, I haven't.
It's almost like I guess it's kind of like The Sims or some. I'm not sure how to. Basically, you're a Bond villain, for lack of a better term. You're a Bond villain, and it's your idea to build your secret lair and to put your traps in there and to keep the good guys and the good spies out of your secret lair.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I think that game came out like in the early mid-90s or something when we first got it. It's actually like a really fun game. You get because you have to time the traps just right, and it's really neat. I'm sorry. I got GM Creates in the chat who just backed your book.
Thank you.
You backed it a few minutes ago. I don't know if you already know this, Jam, but you've just entered yourself into a drawing not to buy. You just entered yourself in your drawing to win one of 2 Ethan Van Sciver signed comic books. So congratulations on that, and I'm sure and thanks for back in Samurai and Dinosaurs.
Yeah, so real quick on the whole like mainstream video game industry thing. So I'm totally with you. Like when that guy goes on at length about the mainstream industry or the AAA industry, I understand his points and I agree with some of them, but what's interesting is unlike the comic industry with, you know, what's happening now with Comicsgate and this whole independent scene that little by little is gaining traction, like the video game industry survives because there is a AAA industry. You know, like I'm not saying that makes it good,
No.
but if he got his wish and all that stuff just vanished tomorrow, like there would never be any more consoles, and PC manufacturers would have a hard time selling, you know, new hardware. Like a lot of this stuff comes from the AAA industry for better or worse. And I'm all up for alternatives, but I'm just not seeing valid ones the way I am in the comic industry.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the video game industry is I feel like it's a lot more. It's actually matured in the indie scene a little bit more than comics. I feel like comics are coming up to that point now, to where the indie is being seen by the average person, and just distributions from the creator directly to the person reading the comic. So, and the customers, the thing with the AAA industries that I find to be the issue is the way they handle some of their teams. Now, of course, most of those people are going to get jobs. Usually, any of the developers or anything like that are going to be very easily hired in the
Right.
next situation. They have great skill sets. The people that suffer, the QA teams, the writers, the you know, some of the artists might not make it and might have an issue getting a job. But that's not even just the video game industry by this point. It seems to be any software development industry that happens very often. Anytime when there's acquisitions, they just build that company or an app up as high as possible, and then they wait for Google or some venture capitalists or Apple. They buy it up, they fire everyone, clean house, yada yada yada, and those people are all finding jobs again. And then they charge them obscene prices just to live in like Silicon Valley.
Sure. And you know, on the creative end, like I think that goes for just about any industry now. Like, you know,
Yeah.
you look at like the television industry, you look at the television industry and, you know, like writers just bounce from show to show to show.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I see where he's coming from, but I think it's more so we're just at a weird point in history where everything's changing.
Yeah, everything seems to be. I honestly, I've seen it as soon as the 2008 crash happened,
Right.
where no one's really looking for longevity anymore. They're, you know, even in the software development world, the quickest way to get a raise is not to stay at the job you're at; it's to take the next job a year later to get more senior pay, and you just jump from upwards. And it's like that across the board when it comes to any entertainment right now.
Sure.
Um, So no, I completely agree with you with the AAA industry. If that's gone, then there's not the anyone who doesn't actually care, because the people who have the money in the video games, they don't really care about the video games. They're seeing that it's creating money, it's creating profit, so they're gonna back the video games. And being that there's that interest in it, it's getting people jobs, it's getting them hired.
Right.
So and then it's causing, you know, the people to go out on their own and make indie games because they don't want to be part of that, which is, you know, it's kind of funny just anywhere where these companies have scaled to a massive level and tried to appeal to everyone, both comics and video games. It's it's backlashed significantly, but it's caused a bunch of interesting indie IPs to come out of the ashes.
Right. Right. I mean, like connecting the two industries, you look at you look at all the terrible business decisions that, you know, Marvel has made over the past 5 years, and you can almost draw a straight line to like what EA is doing with BioWare and
Oh
Anthem.
yeah.
Like it's just this thing of like you're trying to make something to appeal to an audience that isn't necessarily going to sustain you the way that the previous audience has and is willing to continue to for the next like 20, 30 years.
Yeah, and Blizzard is laying off. They just announced they're laying off a bunch of employees today.
Right, right.
It's not just Blizzard either. It's EA too, right?
EA. Yep. What's that like in the major comic scene? I don't pay as much close attention to Marvel's business practices right now. They having to let a lot of people go.
A lot of their stuff is contractors, so I'm not sure how all that. I don't know how they would report like a mass layoff.
That's true.
Because technically, if you're a writer and artist, you're not a direct employee of Marvel. You're a paid contractor.
Right, and I'm pretty sure like both Ethan and Richard have talked about how, you know, their sales are way down. So what they'll do is they'll hire talent for extremely cheap rates, and that makes it look like they're earning a profit, but really they're just paying terrible wages.
And you could tell in the art too.
Yeah, and I think that everybody I've talked to said, well, if they did just fewer books of better quality, then they would do better. But to them, I wonder if they were to do that, if it would look like, oh, look, they're right, we're failing because now we have all these fewer comics. Well, I'm wondering if that goes into the idea.
I mean, that's basically what's happening with DC now. Like they fired a bunch of people, they cut down on a bunch of their titles, and you know their whole messaging moving forward is quality over quantity.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we'll see over the next like 6 to 12 months, like if that makes much of a difference, given like how shaky the industry as a whole is right now.
I think if they do that, they have to work out something about lowering the cost of the books. That's got to figure into it.
Yeah, they had a good model when they were like when they had that whole thing of like we're drawing the line at $3, but I think that pretty much went away over the past like 2 years.
Yeah, they'll essentially have to pull like a Coca-Cola deal where they're not raising the price of the books
right
up too high over a long period of time. It seems to be just like across the board, though. Whether you look at people building houses, you look at Marvel, you look at the video game industry, it's like they just see mass volume and they're just looking at the numbers explode, but they're not really thinking long term of how it might affect them and cost, you know, even 5 years down the road, it seems.
Well, you know, even someone like, you know, Jimmy Palmiotti, and I know he's deleted a bunch of these tweets. You know, his thing is he thinks within the next 5 years, like, not only is the comic industry going to be barely recognizable, the idea of monthly comics is going to change, and like he's really adamant that within 5 to 10 years, like the experiment that they're trying with Walmart, where like you have a compendium book of just a bunch of different titles, like every week you'll go to the comic shop and get that book, and that will be your DC lot for the week, you know?
I think there's a subset. I don't know how much collectors are on anymore. Our collectors are still part of the audience like they used to be. Mm-hmm. But I think you're going to lose a lot of those people when you do something like that.
Right.
I think the collectors for sure are the ones that are absolutely in it for the filling their long boxes. Those guys are if it's just going to be a compendium without that monthly floppy, I think they lose a lot of those people. But I don't know what percentage of the buying customers they are.
Right. Or if it'll even matter to DC's bottom line at that point in time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I mean, in a roundabout way, like this all kind of circles back to Comicsgate because I think Ethan has the right idea of like, hey, you know, the business model survived for this long for a reason. So just keep doing the business model. Like, you know, you have your premiere edition, which you spend extra for. Then you have the standard, like on the shelf floppy editions. Then you have your digital edition, and then you have like your trade and oversized hardcover collections. Like, if the market is contracting on the type of consumers who want that stuff, well, then maybe as a creative, it's your job to try to get people who aren't readers to buy that stuff. And I think that's why people like Ethan and Richard are succeeding, is because they figured out like YouTube is the new talk radio. It's the new water cooler. It's where people who aren't in the shops every Wednesday go for entertainment and just to keep their ear to the ground.
Well, yeah, and since we got into this kind of binge culture from like Netflix and stuff, nobody's waiting a week for episodic TV. Right. Nobody's going to want to wait a week all the time for episodic comic books. And YouTube, you get guys like Ethan or Mike Miller, they're every night they're on talking about something. It's right. Like it's almost like your specific topic, instant news. Like if you find any other topic that it's somebody, you know, that grabs an interest, comic books has that following, has that you know, the hobbyists and stuff. You find any other hobby, and if they're doing a daily show, I'm sure there must be a daily anime show somewhere, or you know, that kind of stuff. Then that's everybody. I don't watch TV anymore. We have 2 TVs, and I can't remember the last time I watched. I think the Super Bowl, but even then we streamed that.
Sure, yeah. I haven't. So I love the idea of TV, but I'm really picky when it comes to what I watch. And you know, like even if you look at like let's say the Sci-Fi Network, like even they're changing their business model, because like for the last season of 12 Monkeys and for the first season of the new George R.R. Martin show, like they didn't release those weekly. Like on their streaming platform, they just released it all at once. And you know, on the network itself, they, you know, when they premiered, they just ran the whole season over the course of a weekend.
Wow. I know they did that when they introduced The Simpsons to FXX or whatever.
Right.
They played every single episode. They just cleared out whatever, you know, cleared out every other show.
Right. And it was like 2 weeks long.
Yeah.
Well, I think the big issue across all entertainment right now is people interjecting politics into everything. Like Zach has said this too. The whole point of this is that you're telling a story. You're entertaining people. You're getting people to escape from their life. It's an escape. You already have the day-to-day stuff and the politics. Anytime, you know, you bring up the news, it's the What Did Trump Do show. And you're like, I don't feel like watching that. I kind of want to just pick up something and not hear about it. Sometimes I don't care because, you know, I don't really have any say in that right now. So, you know, and then you have politics in video games, in TV, in comic books.
It's like there's no way to get away from it.
The storytelling's gone. You've just pulled me out of the story. The second I see a Trump reference or something, like I'm here reading a story. I don't want to be. Could you imagine if you're, you know, reading Animorphs and they had something about Trump in there?
Well, and it's, even though I'm pretty right wing, but even if like they were doing that with, let's say they were doing that with Obama, I don't want to see Obama in every comic book I read. No, you know, I was not a fan of the guy, but it doesn't mean I want him to be the villain of every single, you know, I don't want the Democrats to be the villain of every comic book I read. Can't you just have the villain be some random guy that wants to take over the world?
Some villain? Does it always have to be some allegory or allusion to everything?
Exactly. I don't mind if you want to put issues in comics, but there's a difference between having issues and how you present it. And having politics. It's one thing if like Like this whole Captain America doesn't want to be Captain America anymore.
Right.
Or, you know, and it's, if Trump wasn't elected, then you wouldn't see that story.
It's everything's turned to clickbait, essentially.
Yeah, and what you do, the way they present it, like I said, you can present issues and you can present politics in such a way where the audience isn't the bad guy, because the way they present it, oh, everybody that believes this way, this is the villain. He believes these things. He's the bad guy. Well, what he's saying is close enough to what half the country believes, that now what you've done is you've turned half your readers into the bad guy. Nobody wants to read a story where they're the bad guy.
Yeah, and if they're truly trying to appease the general audience and the mass audience, they wouldn't be touching that at all. They would just be telling a story and making it about the comic that you're reading.
Yeah.
Making it about the video game that you're playing, the book that you're reading, not about what's going on in the real world all the time. And I feel like that's the core of everything, because again, it comes down to content. If the content is foul, no one's gonna want it.
And then if you don't go political, you get blowback for not being political. Like everything that Ubisoft went through last year when they put out Far Cry 5. Like everyone was convinced that whole thing was going to be allegory for Trump's America, and when it wasn't, when it was about cults and religious extremism, that game was just trashed by critics. And it's like, but the game's great. It's just not what you want it to be.
Well, it's like I saw the story the other day where they were playing the new not Evil Dead, Resident Evil, and the whoever wrote the article was like, I wish I could play as a more compassionate hero.
Right.
So play a different game. I wish I could play as Alice, but she was more of a compassionate hero.
It's narcissism to the max, is what it is. You
I
don't matter. You don't matter as much as you think you do.
You know what? I wish I could play Resident Evil 2 as Alice, but she eats power pellets and chases ghost monsters. That's what I want. Why can't I have that game? The game is what it is. Either you like it or you don't, but you can't make everything about yourself.
And they were saying that they felt like Leon wasn't like, because he was taking bullets or ammo or taking stuff.
Right, from other survivors who might
other survivors, exactly. And I'm like, well, and they didn't even give him credit for his lesbian haircut.
We got Scott Payne in the chat, who also backed your book. You are over 3,500 right now. You're 3,515.
Thank you, Scott.
Scott, I don't know if you heard earlier on. We started tonight at 33.64, and right now we're up to 35.15. And Scott, I don't know if you heard earlier, but everybody that gets back Samurai and Dinosaurs tonight, from when this show started, gets entered into, not everybody, gets entered into the chance to win one free comic book signed by Ethan Van Sciver. I'll be giving 2 of those away. So you've just been entered.
All right, and here's where I'm at. So Ethan's been in touch. He has the High Council to record tonight. So he's not making any promises, but he's saying he'll see what he can do. How about we go till about 7, and then I'm going to give my voice a break until I hear back from him.
Okay, 7. What's it your time now?
It's 6:30.
Okay, yeah, that works. That works for me.
Cool.
Tip of the tongue and the teeth and the lips. You got to do your vocal warm-ups for the High Council.
So yeah, like, and when it comes to like politics and entertainment, like it's also about platform and like when it's appropriate. Like you know, like the people who do the stupid comics have always been political thing. They always point to something like X-Men or like V for Vendetta, and it's like, yeah, but those books were created to be that. I don't care that that's what they are, because that's the point of their creation. There's a difference between that and like, hey, I'm going to like make make Batman about fucking apartheid or whatever, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And if you want to have a one-off story that's what it's about, that to me that's okay too. If something's going on and you want to do something, but at least be blatantly obvious about it. Don't make half your audience the bad guy. You can
Sure.
talk about issues. I mean, you don't want to talk about every single issue, but you can bring something up for a one shot or something like that. Just to, writers have their rights too, to talk about stuff that they want, but you just can't make it every single time.
Right.
Every time I pick up this, every time I pick up this book, it's always going to be about Trump, or it's always going to be about white nationalists, and Nazis are always the bad guy.
And that's the issue, is that it's not. You can do that, but the issue is that it's not a passive thing. Like, these are my beliefs in the topic.
Mhm.
It's the outcry where they're, as you're seeing with Brie Larson right now, Captain Marvel, where I want less white men in my audience. That's like, it's grossly offensive, because
Mhm.
you're going out there, and it's not passive. It's not, I believe more women should believe in superheroes. Like, that would have been a better angle, but they go for that clickbait angle yet again. I don't think they even really believe in that. They're buying an image. They just want the image. They want to
Right.
get the image out there to try to sell books. And movies and tickets. It's all meant to build up hype. It's just everyone goes the negative hype now.
When did white guys' money start meaning less than everyone else's money? That's what gets it for me. They're like, oh, well, I'm not marketing to why. They have money too. They have more money, and that's your complaint is white guys have more money, but you don't want it. Essentially, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, and like I try not to take it to that place of being offended because it's a racial issue. I just look at it from like a business owner and a capitalist standpoint of like, but your job is to do this thing, and this thing is making money. Why are you trying to fuck up at the thing that you're doing? Like,
Mhm.
just do your job.
Well, and that's the thing about trying to get this woke audience with these new books and putting the more kind of lefty politics in it, is you already had an established audience, and instead of trying to expand the audience you have, what you're doing is you're saying, we don't want the old audience anymore. Now we want this new audience, with no evidence that those people actually want your product or would buy your product.
Yeah, like I think it was Roaming Millennial on, I can't remember if it was YouTube or Twitter, but with the whole Brie Larson thing, she was like, she could have just privately reached out to journalists that she felt weren't getting a fair shot at attention, and just been like, hey, do you want to like come talk with me about my movie? She could have done that, but instead she did the stupidest, most ignorant thing that she could do instead,
Yeah. Well, she said the whole book was her activism.
Right.
Why don't you just try to sell a movie? The people, why don't you just try, why don't you focus on making $1 billion and then worry about all the activism, whatever, later.
It's already a miracle that she got as far as she did as an actor. Like, wouldn't you just be happy that you got this amazing role where you're the star, you're on all these posters, it's backed by the company that owns 40+% of the media in the world?
Right. And
isn't that enough?
And they're saying that they want you to be the face of the movie studio for the next 10 years. Like, isn't that enough?
That's if she's even actually, the one that's saying this stuff, or if, her manager, or whoever is the one who has the decisions, is buying that identity in the first place and pushing it on people. Once again, it's the clickbait.
My wife has this interesting theory that the reason that you haven't seen any footage of her in the Avengers Endgame trailers is because Marvel is waiting until the last second to go gold with that final edit, and if Captain Marvel bombs, like, they're just going to edit the shit out of that movie.
Yeah, it's an exact echo of Solo.
Right.
It wasn't really brought up too much. they're kind of showing the trailers like right before it comes out now. They haven't given much information, and then they're already starting with the woke politics as far as it can go with the clickbait. Again, just like Solo, where they were, Lando is now pansexual in a child's movie. A family movie you're supposed to bring your kids to. We have a man that will basically screw anything that moves in this outer space because it gets lonely out there in outer space.
And you've got a robot talking about like all the stuff that they get up to. It's like, why am I watching this?
That was the worst part, because I mean, whatever the deal was him, he was kind of subtle about it,
right?
But then the robot started talking about it, and it was, I mean, it didn't get into like graphic detail, but it was enough. The only thing that movie got right was at the end when Han shot first.
Right.
I think they did that to dig at Lucas. Sure. I think they did it as a dig to Lucas, and I was like, I don't understand. I mean, it's good. It's cool because that particular scene kind of serves the original fans, but at the same time, Lucas is the one that came out and said, "Oh no, we didn't want to show. We changed it because we didn't want to show Han as some kind of psycho killer or whatever," which it doesn't. But I mean, he was wrong on it, and I guess it served the Han shot first side, but at the same time, I think it was. I don't understand what they were trying to do because it was really a dig at him.
Right. Yeah,
their anger from not making the money back.
Like you look at someone like a Robert Downey Jr. or like a Chris Pratt or a Gal Gadot, and it's like regarding Brie, it's like, don't you as a professional see that you have a template for how to do this the right way? Like Brie's, like you look at someone like Gal Gadot who's like, oh, I'm gonna give a bunch of my free time and go hang out with sick kids and just try and make them feel better. And then you look at Brie and she's like, hey, why don't you give my studio money so that you can pay to have these kids go see my movie?
Yeah, I mean, there's I'm okay with, because I guess it's a separate organization. Uh-huh. I'm okay with them saying, yeah, we'll pay for little girls, or that's what we'll do. Sure. Go see the movie. I'm okay with that. I think the issue is her involvement in really pushing it, because it's whether she agrees with it or not. If she had just said something like, oh yeah, I heard about that, and it's a good idea or whatever. But for her to, I don't know how much she's actually been pushing it. But I mean, it really kind of looks kind of skeevy. It's like, yeah, we'll give money to this charity, so they'll put money in my pocket.
It's like the big companies that ask you if you want to donate to something so they can have the tax write-offs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think I honestly, who knows? Actors are pretty simple. They want attention. And they want the money from people to see their movie. So who knows if she actually cares about that or not? And that's what I always look at this stuff is, does Brie really care about that, or does she care about all the attention she's getting?
What other movies has she been in? I can't even think of something that I mean, not that I go to movies that much, but
Scott Pilgrim is the last one that I can remember.
That was a while ago.
That was a long time ago.
Who was she in Scott Pilgrim?
Not even that much of a scene.
The glam singer.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Another glamorous role for a blank face.
And she was the love interest in 21 Jump Street.
In 20. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I remember that.
The remake. I never saw that one. The remake.
That's by Lord and Miller, the guys that got fired from Solo.
Oh, cool.
They were supposed to do and I don't know how they were going to work this, and it didn't make any sense to me. They were supposed to do a crossover, 21 Jump Street and Men
in Black.
Men in Black, yeah. And when I first heard that, I'm like, I don't understand. That's like two completely different audiences.
Yeah, like when, I mean, not that you have to worry about spoilers with movies like 21 and 22 Jump Street, but like when you get to the credits for 22 Jump Street, like it basically opens up that world to them being able to do anything. So
yeah,
like
that was actually really funny.
Yeah, it totally would have made sense, but it's never going to happen.
Yeah, well, I think they've already said it's not going to happen.
Right.
I love the original Men in Black. I remember when I saw that in the movie theater.
It was great.
Yeah, that
It
came
was
out
so great.
Yeah, that came out the first year I was in the Navy.
That's an issue too with like the movies coming out. I'm all for Marvel fans getting, but I feel like it's like such a chance for people to get anything that's not a superhero movie into the movies now. But then again, no one's really going, so it makes sense to do the superhero movies.
Yeah, I don't. So it's such the big money makers. They're
doing okay. Like Infinity War was pretty good.
Yeah. There's one of the other comics I backed last year was Wolverton, Thief of Impossible Objects.
Mm-hmm.
And you should follow those guys on Twitter. It's a pretty cool comic. The idea is they're like old timey, I don't know, like 1800s, I guess. Kind of cat burglar. Mm-hmm. And what he does is he steals stuff like the monkey's paw, and he steals all these kind of supernatural objects, and so they can stow them away and keep them away from evil people from using them. But the whole bit was they wrote the idea was supposed to be a movie. They wrote the script to be a movie, and when they pitched it to studios, the studios told them, we'd rather see this as a comic book first because it's like a test audience. And that's what they told them. Yeah, so that's how they made it into a comic because they wanted. I guess the studios want it as like look at that as a test audience. Well, comic book movies are doing well. This is kind of iffy as far as it's sci-fi, not really sci-fi, but fantasy, that kind of stuff, horror a little bit. So I think they want to see that it's at least doing well as a comic and see how it would look as a comic, and then they can almost. I wonder if they would almost just bring the comic right to the studio and like, bam, here, read this. This is what we want to make into a movie.
Makes sense too. With comics, it's already paneled out. You get a visual with the writing going along. It's essentially you're making their shots for them already, so they can already visualize it.
Well, that's what they did with a lot of the Ninja Turtle movie. The first Ninja Turtle movie, they just took right from the comic and they did panel by panel. That was a lot of their layout. Right. I mean, the story was a little different, but that's how they laid out a lot of scenes that way.
But then you can get too literal, like what Rodriguez did with Sin City, and it's like I love City movie, but like that was a little too on the nose sometimes.
Stinky onion man.
Yes.
That was my favorite scene. But I like, and that's the kind of comics I like too, is the real interesting ones. Like, Samurai and Dinosaurs. That's interesting to me. That's something out of the scope of the usual. Like Doug's Bigfoot Bill.
Yes.
I like that kind of stuff because it's different. It's not always the superhero thing, or at least not on the surface, the same old, people in tights kind of thing. I find those the interesting one. Those are usually the ones I back and the ones I follow. Like Crystals was interesting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's what we were saying earlier tonight. Like, I grew up reading such a weird array of books that, while I'll always love superhero comics, like my tastes in like genre are just kind of all over the place. And I think that's why I like Comicsgate on the fan side of things, because like there's stuff that's being presented that I haven't seen in the mainstream comic industry in a good like 5 to 10 years now.
Yeah, I think it's just really starting up, and there's already a wide array of all different kinds of tastes and all different kinds of art styles right now. I think it's great. It's really interesting. It's interesting to me too because before I even knew about Comicsgate, I was into comics probably. I started reading it in the late 90s. Like I was around 5th grade then. Someone gave me a copy of I inherited some comics. I think it was Youngblood.
Okay.
And it was the one it was some cover where they had, that's when they were doing the sparkly covers and they had the secondary like lenticular lens over it.
When comics were great.
Oh, it was so
That
cool.
was my prime era.
I saw that artwork and I was just like enamored by it, and I thought it was really, really cool. And I took a break for a while, and then I started getting into it actually when I was learning how to drive a car, and the guy who was teaching me how to drive a car was super into comics. And he's like, "Hey, did you know that, Superman breaks Batman's back?" I'm like, "Oh, no, I didn't know that." Oh, spoiler alert, by the way. I'm like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting," and then I got into it again, and then for me, it's always about the IP, the characters, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Earthworm Jim was always interesting to me. Like Doug's new thing that he came out with, I like the weird stuff.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Invader Zim, Johnny the Killer.
Oh, I loved Invader Zim. That was such a great show.
Oh, yeah, I like that. I like that weird stuff.
Yeah, I think like going from my childhood years to my teenagers, like being right in that zone when Ren and Stimpy premiered just kind of messed my brain up.
Yes, Ren and Stimpy was my favorite show when I was a kid.
Yeah, like
yes, Ren and Stimpy was a big one for me. Ren and Stimpy, like you were saying, Invader Zim. I loved the grill. Gur was my favorite.
Yeah.
We dressed up my son when he was a baby. We made like this really goofy, like, because he has the funky looking dog costume.
Right.
We made this costume, and we made it look like obviously all sewn up and stuff.
With the big zipper in the back.
The whole deal. We the big head. We put it on. We put it on our baby for Halloween his first year.
That's awesome.
Did you ever read Johnny the Killer too?
No, I did not.
Oh, there's this one scene where it's this guy who's talking. He's like, "Oh, I have to go to a group of people where I can be an individual and be by myself, where I'm not judged and blah, 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 blah." And then he's just in this group of people and just a bunch of goth and emo kids all together. And you see someone in the audience saying, "Ew, someone wore blue jeans."
Did you ever hear it was a comic strip called Go Die? I don't remember who the author was.
No.
It was a comic strip, and I got a hold of it. It was in comic book form. They collected all the comic strips, and it was a really like dark, humored comic strip. And it was the guy in charge. He had a dog, and almost everybody was some kind of psychopath. The neighbor kid was like a serial killer. And the dog, like one of the strips, like Santa Claus shows up, and he sees their house, and for some reason he hangs himself. And the punchline of the joke was the dog. He's like, "Great Christmas piñata."
I think I'm looking at it right now.
Did you find it?
I found, it's on this blog called Comics Should Be Good.
And there was another one. It was no, I don't want to read them all, but if you can find them online, anybody watching, find Go Die, the comic strip. It's really dark and bizarre, like really dark humor. Like if you've ever seen Anthony Jeselnik, the comedian, it's like that level dark, and sometimes even darker.
Yeah, I like Anthony Jeselnik.
He does not hold back.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, what else did I used to read? Yeah,
I love Conan too. That's like one of my. I still like Conan a lot. I'm not sure what it's like now.
Conan, he's changed his show.
No, Conan the Barbarian.
Oh, that's Conan.
Conan.
It's Conan. Conan is a completely different person.
Conan.
You have to say it correctly.
But what if I call him Butt Flap Guy?
Oh, Conan.
Oh, everybody knows who that is.
Oh, yeah.
That was in,
Butt
what
flap
was her
guy.
name? Post, right? Gail's post. Did you see that?
No.
Oh, Gail posted. Somebody posted. Like she blocked me, but somebody else did some screenshots of some of her Twitter posts,
Mhm.
and it looked like a Conan action figure. And you can see, and it's got like the fur thing around his waist, and like you can like if you move it aside just a certain way, you can see his butt, and that's what she had posted. This is the girl that's women in fridges and you shouldn't sexualize women, all this other stuff, and she's got this picture of an action figure Conan's ass.
Well, it's okay when they do it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's okay. They're the blessed ones.
they're only kidding when they do it.
Right, right.
That's the thing.
We're racist, misogynistic
Yeah.
trash.
Yeah.
Conan just got relaunched because Marvel got the rights to it back. I've heard it's pretty good.
I've liked it. I've been doing the Conan the Barbarians. My comic store, when they get their promo stuff, they get 2 Conan posters, and one of them is an Alex Ross.
Oh,
And
okay.
you can, when it
Oh,
comes
wow.
in, if the first person to reserve whatever gets it, and so I reserved the Alex Ross poster. So I got to figure out a place to hang that where the wife will let me.
That's cool.
I actually have like a hardback book of a bunch of Conan art from when that Age of Conan MMO came out. I bought like the collector's edition, and it had that, and then it had a few posters. I have a friend that's really, really into it. And then the last time that had anything to do with it is when that Survivor game came out, the Conan Exiles. That was really interesting.
Yeah, I never played it.
When it first launched, it was the buggiest thing you've ever seen in your life. It was so bad and horrible. But later on, it got good because they started. They added climbing to it and all kinds of stuff.
Gotcha.
It's much more tolerable than like Ark,
Sure.
which is very intolerable after a while.
Like I mean, obviously not including the films. Like my favorite era of Conan is probably right when Dark Horse got the license and they had Busiek writing it and Kerry Nord on the art. Man, and that was like one of Kerry Nord's like first major projects. Like that first year, those books are gorgeous and they still hold up today.
Scotty Richard Studios in the chat says, "Have you guys ever heard of a comic called The Last Christmas, where Santa's village gets overrun by mutant gangs and his wife is killed?" He said it was one of the funniest things he's ever read.
Yeah, by Posehn.
Is it Brian Posehn?
Yeah, that was his first comic.
Oh, no way. That's pretty awesome. I'm looking at Kerry Nord's Conan art.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's really like grisly and
I got some old when I went to the convention last year. I collected a bunch of comics. Like I went and saw what names were going to be at the convention, and just bought a bunch of old comics out of the long boxes in my shop. And I got a bunch of Conans, and I got some signed by Tom DeFalco. He didn't write them or anything, but he was the editor, so I had him sign a bunch of them. And then Bob Camp, who was one of the Ren and Stimpy guys, he actually was on one of the books as the artist. So I got to actually talk to him a little bit, and he signed my book. He was a really cool guy.
yeah, wasn't the creator of Ren and Stimpy German?
John Crispolucci was his name. I don't know if he was German.
It was originally a German cartoon that they brought to America.
Could be wrong, but I think it
Wrong
was
on that.
John Crispolucci.
Yeah, John Crispolucci. Let's see.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what his deal was.
Spumco. Maybe it was the production company was German. No, it's Los Angeles. Never mind.
Yeah. They did a lot of weird kind of German lederhosen references.
Yeah, they did.
And what's his name was Hoek.
Ren
Hoek.
Right, his cousin.
Yeah. Oh, Sven. That's right.
Sven, yeah.
I am
Sven.
Polly. You are Sven. I remember that episode.
And
All right,
Powdered Toast Man.
Yeah. All right, so you're going to be leaving in a few minutes. So let's go over your comic one more time.
Yeah.
Over.
Sure.
So I'm going to do that and do that. There we go. So once again, let's go over what is Samurai and Dinosaurs.
Sure. So brief elevator pitch. Samurai and Dinosaurs is kind of a bunch of different things, and they're all rolled into one. It's a revenge story. It's an homage to art house and grindhouse samurai movies. There's a bit of Jurassic Park in there, and we also pay respects to classic books like Usagi Yojimbo and Lone Wolf and Cub. To anyone listening who's on the fence, I can promise you an action-packed story, beautiful art, and a explosive finale with a conclusive ending. It's not a case of like the ending is ... to be continued. This is very much a standalone story. There's an idea for a sequel, but it's just that right now. It's an idea. It's not baked into this book. So yeah, like that's Samurai and Dinosaurs in a nutshell, and I hope everyone will give it a shot.
Yeah, everyone check out this really cool art. It's got a really kind of comic strippy feel to it. Like it has a real indie look to it. Not in a negative way, but it's whoa. There we go. Sorry. Yeah, so it's got a really cool indie feel. It's got a really cool look to it. I like the style of the characters and the way they're drawn.
Thank you.
Some more pictures. Again, this is a really cool visual of the city they're going in, or when they're leaving. I assume maybe.
Yeah, that's when he first gets to the city.
All right, and there's your cast of characters.
Right.
Your heroes and your villain in there too. Didn't you say? Is he going to be with them or?
No. Like since he's a major political figure, there's no way like
okay.
he would.
Yeah, he's going to be in the city. Okay.
Yeah.
And let's see, and there's Keanu Reeves.
Exactly.
And, and there's your
Keanu Reeves.
There we go. Yeah, this is guys. This looks like a really awesome book. You don't want to miss this one. We want to get this one funded because I want to get a copy of this one. And just remember, tonight and tonight only, till the end of the campaign. If you back this book, you're gonna get the chance to win one of 2 Ethan Van Sciver signed comic books that I will be providing myself. We'll make arrangements. We're gonna have Mike pick the winners, and then we'll work out how to get those books to you. Also, right now, just to get him funded, because once he gets funded, then he can open up the store, the in demand. So if you feel like, yeah, I've already backed Doug's book, or I've already backed all these other books, and I'm kind of tapped out, to help him get to his goal, get the $8 paperless. And once it gets to the store and you feel like, yeah, now I really want the physical copy, that at least keeps the store going. So you can maybe pick up that physical copy later.
Yeah, we will. If we can reach our goal, we will be keeping the in-demand store open for a good couple weeks before we move on to print.
All right. So definitely, everybody, if you're in the chat, make sure you've backed this book already. It's at right now. It's at, let me see. See if we got any more. It's at 35.15. Oh, 35.23. Look at that. We got another backer already.
That's great.
So 35.23. We started today at let's see. We started today at 33.64. So we've got you a couple $100 anyway.
Yeah, that was a big help, man. Thank you. It's much appreciated.
Right. So everybody in the chat, if you haven't backed it, give it a backing. Tell your friends. Try to spread it out. Get on Mike's stream. I think Mike is streaming right now. Get on his stream and say, "Hey, don't forget about it." And
sure,
I
just might do that.
Yeah, and then I think Ethan possibly might call you later.
Right,
So
we'll
keep your eye out, and let's hope we can get you that goal. There's 6 hours left according to this.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's get him to his goal so that he can get the book, get it out, and then then it gets put into the in-demand store, and then there's more chance for people to buy it.
Right. Well, thanks so much for this opportunity. It's greatly appreciated.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Anytime. If we'll have you on again. If it reaches the goal, we'll definitely have it on again. Have you on again.
Sounds great. All right. Well, you two guys have a great night. I'm gonna go drink some tea.
All righty.
Rest your voice.
Yep.
Drink your lemons. Some heat. Relax.
Right.
Have a drink.
Thanks for coming on, Mike. Holy mackerel,
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Mike.
See you later, Mike. Good luck.
Yeah,
Take care. Thank you.
Manisex, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
You'll be busy. You'll be on Friday.
I'll be on Friday.
All right. Well, we're gonna have Manisex on Friday, so we'll see him then. Check out what's your YouTube channel?
I have a link. It's at forbiddensounds.com. It's in my Twitter.
It's in your Twitter. Okay, so definitely follow him on Twitter and then go subscribe to him on his YouTube channel.
All right, you guys have a good night, and we're gonna end it here.
All right, have a good night, everybody.
Everybody else, remember to subscribe, hit the like button, and hit the little bell. All right, good night.
Good night.